Absolute Martian Manhunter, issue 1, Dennis Camp and Javier Rodriguez on the art. So I actually saw the news that this was getting extended to 12 issues before I read it.
Okay.
And it seemed like people were being positive, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool," because it wasn't that I wasn't looking forward to it necessarily, but it kind of looked like the weird one, like between all the absolutes, this was the one that kind of felt like, okay, this is going to be quirky, and it might not be for me, and that's okay because it's just it's a mini, but ultimately though, when I read it, I was like, okay, there's a very strong sense of style here, and I also it kept me on my toes like a lot of these absolute books have at first, where I don't really know what the rules are or what this version of this character is, because like this starts off with like a guy, an FBI agent named John, who's in an explosion, and we get these panels of him being patched up, and there's like a little moment where you see what is in silhouette what the Martian Manhunter looks like in this with this shape with just the one red eye kind of thing, with some of this multicolored kind of like clouds floating around them, and it's just this little tease, right? And I was thinking early on, okay, so this is John Jones, but he's got an alias. He's named John, and he's in the FBI. But then as the issue kept going on, it started becoming clear that no, this is just a human named John who's an FBI agent. But all of a sudden, he's hearing things telepathically, and I was like, wait, does someone become Martian Manhunter in this world? By the end of the issue, though, the impression I was getting is that John Jones, the Martian Manhunter, is more like an entity that attaches to a human in the absolute universe. It feels like he's bonding with this human, and that's why this human is now suddenly like hearing random things from his doctor or his wife. Like he's hearing their thoughts, and he's not really sure why he's hearing them, or even noticing sometimes that they are. But it kind of presents itself as a slow possession story where he's seeing these multicolored like clouds or smoke come in, and he's seeing it more and more until by the end of the issue he's kind of going down like a rabbit hole of like almost like LSD dementia, and it kind of like finally like the Martian's able to speak to him and say, "Hey, it's me. I like I am you. You are me. We have So I'm just getting that from what this book has told me, and it's my interpretation of it, that John Jones isn't physical in this world. He just attaches himself to a physical person.
Yeah, I have no idea what happened in this book, but I love it. like again, had it very clear. We understood what Absolute Batman was. Then we understood what Absolute Wonder Woman was. This could be just a different take on Martian Manhunter. It doesn't necessarily need to be absolute, right? So I'm curious to see how it fits in to that.
But come on, though, if we ever get Absolute Justice League in this version of Martian Manhunter's there, I'm like, that's an interesting proposition.
And it feels like it's really leaning into that concept of Martian vision, right? Where we always see Martian Manhunter, like, well, we'll talk about it when we get Justice League Unlimited, right? Where he has kind of similar powers to Superman plus telepathy and shape changing, right? And there's always this concept of Martian vision, and what does that exactly mean? Was it just like this heat vision? Does he just read your thoughts? Here, it really leans into like the psychedelic. It like these are what the thought forms are. Like through this Martian vision, he can see what not just see, but hear and feel what the people are going through in order to figure things out, which I think is a really fun concept.
I think what's interesting to me about this is that it seems like he was bonded with John Jones at the time of this explosion. And I think that's interesting. And also this idea that he keeps seeing the Martian vision represented in this very kind of multicolored smoke that he's seeing move around. And I say, and this idea of where there's smoke, there's fire comes up a lot, like that phrase. And of course, Martian Manhunter's weakness is fire. So I don't think it's an accident that a lot of this is all revolving around the idea of fire and smoke. So, like, that's interesting. And it makes me, because the part of it's also that he, like, the FBI guy, despite the fact that he should be taking time off from work, he lies to his wife and says that he has to work. And he lies to his, like, employers and says, no, I need to work. Like, I should be, I don't need to go home. I don't need to spend time with my family. So he's kind of obsessed. He wants to explore why this happened, why this bomber set off this like coffee shop or whatever it was, and he's looking into it. And when he talks to like the the mom of like the guy who did this with the suicide vest, like the mom's adamant, no, he was a good boy, he wouldn't do this. And it makes me wonder, was he like being like manipulated by like telepathic stuff? You know, whether or not it was Jean inadvertently caused it and he didn't mean to, or is there a white Martian doing something?
Yeah.
Is the white Martian also something that attaches itself to people, like Jean seems to be? Because it's during all this like detective-y stuff where he's talking to like the you know the suspect's mom, the neighbor, whoever, and like he, you know, the character's narrating and saying like, how do I know like what this guy's thinking right now? How do I know that this neighbor's telling the truth but hiding the fact that she smokes a lot of drugs? Or how do, like, he keeps like sort of noticing things, and he's having like these weird moments where he looks down at his wife chopping up some vegetables when he gets home, and it turns into just this weird psychedelic like mix of colors on the chopping board, and he doesn't, and it's like, you know, and there's even a weird moment actually where he goes to speak to his son, and his son's like made little like Play-Doh versions of his mum and himself, and he's like, oh, where's your dad? Where am I? And he points over to like a little Play-Doh of like what I assume Jean's going to look like, you know, the Martian Manhunter. So I like, it's just all these things. It really plays this idea of him being obsessed, and just like this thing that's sort of getting into his brain and really, I don't even know how to describe it. Like at a certain point,
no, it's this kind of thing of obsession where now he's obsessed with this. But I wonder if he got fused with whatever this version of John Jones is, whatever the Martian Manhunter is, in that bombing. And now, and instead of like you kind of said like an entity kind of vibe, I'm just wondering if this is how how a human brain could what's the word I'm looking for? How it interprets the Martians of the absolute universe, right? It's almost like these thought forms, and now this thought form is now bound to this one person. Yeah. And it's going to have to be almost like this coexistence where John Jones is the person, but the Martian Manhunter is going to be the, you know, when he uses the powers to do
I do genuinely wonder if Martian Manhunter is here to manhunt someone, like if that's directly what he's here for. And then because it gets more sort of like kind of clear to some extent that these colors represent the Martian stuff, because when he's talking to the suspect's mom again, he basically sees this color smoke coming out of her ears, almost like the thoughts are draining out of her. And then that's where it goes kind of really wacky, where he starts just sort of seeing it all around him, and he starts seeing like the memories she has of her son, and it's all represented in this multicolor psychedelic kind of, you know, wavy art where it's just kind of vaguely forming the shapes inside all the clouds. And he's like coughing up and he's freaking out and all the rest of it. So yeah, and he walks down the street and he can basically see like each person's like covered in a different color, and it all just becomes color vomit. But it works in the context of like he's starting to freak out and just see everything around him and just like hear all their thoughts. Like you sort of see letters coming out of the colors at one point where it says like coffee beans or bacon, and it's like, wait, is this just them thinking about what they're having for lunch or something?
Yeah,
and he's
fish sticks and someone speaking or thinking in Spanish.
Yeah,
you know, but also just like you're getting these like thought bubbles in different font, right? That is, I'm assuming, the Martian side of this, where it says like, you know, dancing tapestry of multicolored scarves, where it's almost trying to help him perceive this. Right, like it's not just smoke, it's everything, it's how everybody is connected.
So yeah, I mean, it kind of does flash back to that moment of the explosion, which really kind of emphasizes this idea that whatever's happened here, this union that's happened between him and the Martian, has happened in that moment. So no, it's very, very interesting. In fact, at one point he even kind of says something about a memory doesn't really have, like it's not his own or something. It's almost like he's remembering someone else's memory. But yeah, at the end, it's the Martian's actual like sort of talking to him and saying, no, it's not a miracle, it's me. So it's almost suggesting that he kind of saved the because they start
him.
when he's in the hospital. They're like, oh, you're lucky you survived. Like everyone else died. So I wonder if it's just a case of Jean could or the Martian could only save one person, and or maybe there was a reason why he picked this guy.
Yeah.
But either way, there's a lot to unpack and like discover as we go through. And it seems like at the very last panel at that page, it's like he's standing right in front of him. And I actually thought this was the end of the issue because there was the text at the bottom when I was first reading it. Yeah. And then it's like, oh no, there's a whole like couple other pages where he's actually like there. And we get this kind of like reflective moment in like Jean's face or the Martian's face.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at this in physical to see how this effect works, because you can't really hold it up to light on your device. Yeah. You know, but from what I gather, it's like a negative space kind of deal, right? Where John Jones is all in white with this yellow background, and he's very much, you know, there's not a lot of details on his face. And then the Martian aspect is basically every other color, right? So I wonder if you hold it up to the light, it just blends into one. And that's, you know, and then it says backwards, it says where the Martian mind, and then there's a blank. I'm assuming it's supposed to be the F word.
Yeah,
right?
It's mind effort. Yeah.
Yeah. So
where the Martian mind effort. Yes, which is a hell of a thing to say.
Right?
At the end of this. So it's very much this idea that like we are this now, where it's not just one person as the Martian Manhunter.
It's kind of like Firestorm almost, right?
But this is also assuming that because we're still just kind of assuming a couple of things. We're assuming that he is from Mars for one. I mean, he says Martian, so I suppose he would be, but like we're still assuming that he is still Martian Manhunter in the way we think of him as. It might not be. Like what if this is like a I don't know. Like I feel like they could literally like go anywhere with this and say, "Oh, he's actually an experiment from a laboratory somewhere." And he's only called
and
this.
He thinks he's a Martian.
Yeah,
right?
or anything like. And I'm not saying that I expect that. I do still think he'll at least be from Mars, but I just there's a lot of places to go here. It's a very focused story though that really all comes down to this idea of this regular person has got something in his head that's sort of like giving him these telepath abilities, and by the end we realize that he has been fused in some way with what we think of as John Jones, if he even has that name.
Right.
And I don't know. But it was a compelling story. Like I was into it. I was super into like him discovering what he was and like the mystery of it. And because like this is such a different version of Martian Manhunter, it's not even like I came into this with the answers. Like I was still kind of like we're still having to kind of think about it and be like, okay, this must be what the Martians are like here. Like in this obsolete universe, they're completely telepathic. They're as in they don't really have a physical form, or maybe if they do, maybe it's the physical forms elsewhere. But he's just existing with them telepathically right now.
Well, that's why I use like a thought form. Like he exists in the ether between, you know, people or whatever, and that's where, you know, that's why he can read the minds and the history and everything, because it's the connection that's there between the people. It's all very ethereal, you know. And again, I'm not as schooled in David Lynch as like you are, but I was getting some very kind of Lynchian vibes here. Like when he would talk about transcendental meditation, you know, not so much as the movies or the TV shows, but David Lynch, the person, you know, how everything's connected. You just have to know what to look for, you know, and we're all creatures that are sharing the same space kind of vibe, you know, even thought space. And I was just getting all those vibes from this. And there were a couple times where I was like, man, I don't know about this. This is a little bit too weird. And then like the art would take over and I'm like, at least, you know, I don't know what's going on, but the art is beautiful. Like, I love all the colors, because I think this is the same artist that did the Zatanna book with Tamaki, that Bringing Down the House.
Was it? I might have been actually, yeah. It might have been.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
Because the art is very similar with the colors.
I'm only questioning it because when that book was coming out, we had two different JAVIERs on two different books in the same week, and it kept being very confusing. So I'm only just doubting it because of that reason.
Yeah. But I'm gonna say that it is because the art style is very similar. What he does with the colors, like there's this one page in particular where he's going back through the bombing, right? And it almost looks like one of those old who was the graphic designer in the 60s that did like the Vertigo poster Um, and he did. Was it Saul Bass? I want to say he did the title cards and for everything. It's very much like that, where he's in red and you follow him across, but he's not colored exactly. It's almost just like the shape around him is all colored. So you follow the red, and then it goes into between the eyes, and there's just like these sheets of color cutting throughout. Like everything's very dynamic and sharp, and it has its own style. And it's, again, every time the story, I was like, man, this is really out there. I'd get to a page like this, I'm like, it's out here in a good way.
Yeah, no, it feels like it knows what it's doing. It doesn't feel like just weird for the sake of weird. It feels like by the end, I had a clear understanding of the type of story that we're telling. There's still things to like answer about how this Martian works, but I like it gave us a solid foundation by the end. As long as you're keep paying attention to it and taking it in, I think it makes some amount of sense. So yeah, all right. What are you giving an absolute Martian Manhunter?
I'm gonna give this a straight 8.
Yeah, I was thinking kind of somewhere in that, maybe even an 8.5. I could be swayed. I think I am. I think I'm going to go 8.5. Really good stuff. Really different type of story that feels very different to like what Martian Manhunter usually is, but in a weird way kind of takes an element of Martian Manhunter and like says, okay, let's take it to the extreme end of this one idea of him, which is the telepathic side of things. And it's basically allowing them to just do this really like unique story that feels so different. Like it feels like an indie book. It doesn't feel like a DC book, really.
No.
But in a good way. And it's almost exciting, the idea that this version will somehow coexist with like absolute Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman when we get down the line. Absolute Martian Manhunter, issue 2, DENIZ Camp and Javier Rodriguez on the art. So obviously this was a bit of a, I don't know if I'd say a surprise, but it definitely was like, oh, this hit in a way that I don't think anyone was expecting last month. So basically, our main character of John is a bit more kind of like aware that he's got another entity inside him, the Martian Manhunter, or the Martian Mind Effer, as he's also going by, is like talking to him, but he's trying to ignore it. The first half of this book, for the most part, is Jean. I'm going to call him Jean. I mean, whether or not he goes by that name.
Yeah.
For now, I'm going to assume.
That's shorthand is what we're used to. Yeah. Right.
So Jean's trying to talk to him and tell him there's things to go deal with. And it basically is really inventive in the art because it kind of represents this idea that no matter where he turns, like Jean's face is popping up like on stop signs in the newspaper he's looking at. He comes out of the newspaper even. He's like on the street lights, the traffic lights, just constantly popping up and try to talk to him and say, hey, there's things going on here. Bad stuff's coming. We have to go help people. We have to go do a thing. And he's just trying to ignore him. I think my favorite one of those is probably the parking meter, just because it's so similar to the shape of his head in the first place.
Oh, I like when he jumps into the baby and then John starts yelling at the baby and the mom's, yelling, "Get away from me!"
Yeah, it's funny,
my baby.
Right?
That one,
it's legitimately funny. But even though it's
a man losing his mind, and we don't, we understand why, but yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what makes it comical, is that we understand that he's talking to a real thing, but everyone else just thinks he's going crazy. But while this is all going on, you see like the build-up of what is effectively a mass shooter, preparing for an attack. He seems to have killed his parents, and he's getting ready to go somewhere. And this guy, from a little narration we get from him, is convinced that aliens are among us, and that a lot of people are just pretending to be people, and they're actually aliens. So he's completely psychotic, right? That's the what it's going with. And Jean's trying to be like, hey, like, I can't let you completely understand everything yet because it would just destroy your brain because you're a puny human. But in time, you'll like gradually get to the point of understanding everything. But we get a lot of more crazy art. Jean becomes more things in the street. Like there's like a Madame Xanadu street sign for her shop that turns into, and we get like almost like a They Live style panel, where he's like, hey, look at all these signs. And obviously, I don't think they're literally all these things, but this idea that all the advertising's encouraging violence and hate, because like one's for a gun, one's for knives, one's for You know, like, there's one's like a clan member with a torch. Like, it's just all these awful things, like the worst parts of humanity. And he's like, hey, I'm here to try and help fix all this. We've got to stop these bad things from happening. And he tries to calm down the main character by giving him happy memories. He's looking in his brain. He's like, hey, remember that day you were looking at the neighbor's legs? You know, you were young and she was this attractive, you know, woman next door. Remember that? And it kind of works, and he calms down, and it's like, this is weird. But eventually, he's able to get through the message of like the person that he's like, trying to warn him about, that this shooter that's about to do stuff. And he doesn't quite believe it, but then he immediately gets a call over the phone from the police saying, hey, we've got an active shooter, and he's like, shit, we have to go. So we get like the again, Jean's not physically there, but like the version that he's seeing is like in the car with his feet up on the dashboard, and
that image right there, the Let's Ride partner.
Yeah.
Spooky action heroes at a distance. That made me laugh so hard.
Yeah,
just because it's such a weird sentence.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It fits for how weird this book is.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing about the art here is actually the next page, and you've got the shooter it looks like a kaiju walking between the buildings, and they're driving past them. Obviously not literal for what's happening, but it's the idea of like in the way that when something like this happens, the entire city hears about it, and like everyone gets scared, and it kind of like is this haunting thing over everyone. It kind of felt like that. The interesting stuff here, though, is that when he shows up to the incident, right, and there's already people lying dead, right, so it's quite a dark story ultimately when you get to it, is Jean jumps into the shooter's head and feeds back to our main character John like stuff about this guy, so he's able to try and bluff about like who he is. He says, hey, I'm your old friend from school, and like he says the name, and he's like, I know things that only he would know, and he tries to talk him down and like convince him that, hey, like this isn't a thing. And the two big things that happen here, other than just more of Jean looking through his brain, looking for useful information, things that will help or whatever, is that other police show up and they immediately just want to shoot the guy. And like our main character tries to say, hey, no, hold on, I'm talking him down, you know, I'm FBI, blah, blah. But just as he's trying to talk to him, and Jean like finds like this anomaly in his brain. He's like, hey, that like his brain's messed up, I can fix it. It's basically just a collection of bad ideas that he's picked up from movies mixed with his loneliness. And like it's kind of hinted at that maybe, or at least later on it's hinted at that this wasn't a natural thing, like someone did this to him. And that's kind of where we're going with the White Martian stuff, that maybe the White Martian who's on Earth did this to this guy and made him think this way. And which makes sense, because his whole thing is that he's scared and paranoid that there's aliens pretending to be human, which is technically true.
It's true. It's so I listen to a lot of paranormal stuff, and it gets into the conspiracy thing, and I wonder if Dennis Camp is into a lot of that, because this hits on a lot of these themes and ideas, and even stuff in Department of Truth with Tynan. This is hitting on similar things to those of like just how toxic are ideas, right? We say that they're just ideas, but they take root and they can actually poison people. And so here we have something that when Jean is talking about it, you know, right before they go off into the car, he tells them that there's, you know, despair, fear, paranoia, rage, it's everywhere. It's a socio-toxic buildup of, quote, bad vibes. And then when he goes into the shooter's mind, he says that it is, let me get back there, it's a level 18 delusion, hallucination, brain rotter, right? So it's like all these bad vibes are building up in these people, and if they get into somebody like him that the White Martian seemingly had something to do with, you know.
Yeah. Whether the White Martian specifically did something targeting this guy, or it's just like he's generally putting out these vibes that are affecting people like him, I don't know, but one or the other.
Because he's more sympathetic to it, because he's been poisoned so far already by these bad vibes. Yeah. You know, I just like that, you know, as a society, you know, what Dennis Camp's commenting on here, because it's like, yeah, everything's a conspiracy when you're not smart enough to put things together. Right? When you're not able to accept things, that everything looks like a plot against you. But here, like, if you're constantly being told that there's plots against you, you're kind of a victim in it yourself.
Well,
right? Because of
that's the interesting thing about where this goes is that when Jean fixes his brain, the guy like immediately changes and looks down in horror and goes, "Wait, I didn't want this. What the hell? I think I need help." Like he's literally saying, "I think I need help." He's saying the very right thing. Admittedly, it's a little bit late, but like he's saying the right thing,
right.
And it doesn't matter. Like one of the cops just shoots him in the head, which by the way, the art in that page, which shows all of the thoughts leaving his brain in that multicolored, like sort of Martian Manhunter thought, like sort of art style, is such an inspired choice because it just represents the idea that everything that's in there is just leaking out that bullet hole. And the funny thing is there's some clearly happy stuff kind of mixed in there. You see like a baseball player, you see like a kid on a dad's shoulders kind of thing, like clearly happy memories mixed in with the sad stuff and the dark stuff.
And it's like, yes, he victimized all these people and he went over them because he thought they were aliens that were hidden as humans, and this was the only way to get them out, right? But again, he's a victim of these bad vibes as well, you know. And we see that here because he's like these happy thoughts. It doesn't look like there's a lot of negative stuff here, you know.
Yeah, because the next page we get kind of like Jean catching a glimpse of what we think represents the white Martian. Is this kind of classic white alien face that's kind of beams out of him and then back into the screens, which is part of also why I was thinking about They Live a little bit, is the idea of subliminal things in the advertising and whatnot. So no, it's and the end of the book's just the main character going home and not being able to tell his wife about how bad his day was, and you just get this visual of like the Martian Manhunter lying in bed next to the wife. But it is interesting though, because it feels like, okay, this issue started with him not wanting to accept this voice in his head and trying to ignore it, and that was kind of funny. But it feels like through this incident, you have to assume that next issue he's going to be more opening to listening to Jean, because they almost, like, if he'd listened to him straight away, could he have saved the people that got hurt? You know, that's possible, right? But even if he couldn't, there was definitely stuff to be achieved in listening to him. And now there's also this central idea of like the villain of the book being a white Martian, which makes total sense that it's a white Martian because that's just classic Martian Manhunter stuff. But this take on it, super interesting.
Well, and how the white Martians come to end humankind. Like, what does that actually mean? Like, if there are these big thought forms, what has mankind done to draw now the attention of the white Martian that it must be ended? You know,
if that's the case, it's
not like the white Martian's here to control, right? It's here to end humankind.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're assuming it's here because we caught its attention. What if it's just a case of where the Martians came from, which they kind of hint in this might not even be Mars. Like, he might have just used the name Martian to, because you'll understand that, but it's not actually about Mars. But like, you know, maybe it's still like traditional Martian Manhunter where their planet's gone or it's dead. And it's less about anything to do with humanity and more about, we just want this planet for ourselves. So this is like a takeover type thing.
That could be too. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm excited to find out though, one way or the other.
Yep.
This was really good. Just like issue 1, it was a very pleasant read. It was inventive. And it's one of those things with the art again where I don't necessarily love like the drawing style all the time, but it's so inventive with how it shows certain things, like the shooter walking over the buildings, like the moment where he gets shot in the head and all the thoughts are leaking out the background, all the super inventive stuff with the Martian face on all the various objects or people in the first half of the book. Like, all of that is so cool. And then even having him riding in the car next to the main character as if it's a buddy cop thing, also really good. Like, it's just full of creativity and great storytelling. It's hard to fault much of it, honestly. It's after 2 issues, it's at the point where, okay, I'm actively excited about this now, issue to issue. All right, Matt, were you rating Absolute Martian Manhunter?
I'm going to give this an 8.5.
It's got a straight 9, honestly. I really can't argue for anything less than that. Absolute Martian Manhunter, issue 3, DENIZ Camp and Javier Rodriguez on the art. So this has also been a very solid book so far. It's been very surprising, and I am happy to say that I think this issue continues that trend. One of the things that the book keeps doing, which is keeping it very interesting to me, is just how kind of dark it is. Like,
yeah,
this.
I wasn't ready for this one to be about lighting people on fire.
Yeah, so the last issue had a shooter,
a mass shooter,
right? A shooter, and it represented that in a very interesting way. This issue is about the fact that, at least to begin with, 24 homeless people have all been burned alive, and it was all done simultaneously. So it's not like one person's went around and set a bunch of people on fire. 24 different perpetrators all set people on fire at the same time. And that's what our man John Jones and the Martian Manhunter, that's kind of what they do this when they're talking to the other detective when they get to the crime scene and all that. And there's just a lot of great things in the art. There's like a panel here that I loved where John's down looking at the crime scene, and the Martian is like, again, obviously he's just in his head, but it's represented to us as him standing up and looking over his shoulder, and it's just such a like a weird alien thing. And we're getting to that point now where we're getting both narration from John and the Martian, and the Martians are a little bit jumbled, but John kind of explains that he's still kind of getting to grips with English, so it's not completely fully formed yet. So you got all that going on, and then it just gets darker from there, because this all feeds into the overall narrative that we've been building now, which is that all these people lighting these fires don't know why they did it. They're very confused, and they all have these white clouds around their head to insinuate that the white Martian told them all to do this with his powers. And that's what we're kind of building up to. So it feels like it's building its larger narrative, but each issue has felt so focused in like how it's handled everything.
Well, it feels like a case of the week, but they're giving us just enough breadcrumbs for the larger picture, you know? So, which I appreciate. And like, yeah, that image of when they're in the interrogation room, and John's looking at the guy, and there's the white smoke around his head, and the Manhunter's behind him, and it just says partner. Just that whole dynamic of John Jones and the Martian being, you know, partners. I like that continues, and it's starting to become more of the focus that they're working together on this to unravel whatever the white Martian is.
And it's a relationship that's progressing, because John even says early on that he's starting to get comfortable with the idea of talking to him, like this voice in his head. He says that it should make him feel crazy, but the Martian keeps telling him that he isn't crazy, and for some reason he's believing him. So it presents this very interesting sort of like mentality that he's got right now because of this weird situation. And then you've got all of the personal stuff where like the Martian's like sitting in the middle of the couch, and you've just got all these different thoughts coming from the wife, which is like, oh, if I left and went to live with my mum, would he even notice I'm gone? And like the implication being that he's getting all these thoughts via the Martian. He's hearing all these bad things she's thinking about because things aren't so great right now, and you know, but is not like working up the courage to actually like talk about it or fix it in any way. So
yeah. The one that I like is when he comes home, there's all of these different like thought forms, I guess you could call them, on his like front lawn. It's almost like they're being drawn to him because of the Martian. And he's like stepping around them, and they start to take different forms. You can kind of see. But when it gets over to his wife and she's looking out the window, he's just kind of stepping over nothing. And so I really just like that we get his perspective, but what other people are seeing. You know, it really ties it back to the real world in a very good, fun way. Because in a very dark issue, having a bit of levity helps a whole lot.
Yeah, it's balancing its tone really well. And, you know, when things then get back into the plot where he gets the call and then he looks outside and there's fires all over the city, and the smoke in this full-page spread is rising up from all these separate fires and made one big smoke cloud in the sky, and there's just vaguely the shape of a face in it. It's basically just a couple of lines that kind of look like eyes and a mouth. And it's like, that's the white Martian right there. That's what the white Martian's going to vaguely look like when we get to see it more properly. Yeah, it's good stuff, and it's basically the fires have escalated now to people setting houses on fire rather than people. And sometimes it's someone else's house, sometimes it's their own house, sometimes it's kids setting a playground on fire, but there's just all these fires appearing everywhere.
Yeah. Well, and also the concept of when he's talking to the Manhunter, when John is, and that he's like, well, what does the white Martian, why is it doing this? And Manhunter explains, like, can't explain it. It's, why, what's he say? You can't explain, can't explain the criminal justice system to a sunflower seed, or, lay out prisons to a pebble. So it's almost like it's beyond. Right.
Well, no, I guess more specific than that, though. And actually, I think the exciting part of the explanation is when he basically says, he's destroying homes, and you see a home, but that's not what the White Martian sees. The White Martian is not trying to destroy houses. He's trying to destroy the idea of a home. Yeah. He wants to take away the idea that a home even exists. And that's really like trippy, kind of like, but it's almost like a Ram V thing, is that the idea of home and just try to take it away. Which feels like really dark, and it makes it feel it's like, it's one thing to say I'm going to burn down your house, it's another thing to say I want everyone on Earth to not even remember what a home is, and not have that feeling of like a place where you can go and feel comfortable and secure, safety,
right? Because that was the thing that he said, that with his Martian powers, he, the first person that we see that was burned, the homeless guy, his name is Big Al. His last thought was, I want to go home, right? But, what is home to someone that doesn't have one? And that's where this, it gets revealed, like, it's the concept of safety. In the last, thoughts, this guy just wanted to be safe. And that's such a primal thing, right? Like, it's such a bare bones desire for a human. And that's what it's trying to destroy.
And I think an important detail there is the idea that this homeless guy who's been homeless for 20 years still had that thought, I just want to go home, as he was burning alive, says that that's how strong the idea of home is that even for someone who's not had it in a long time, still has that desire to experience home. So it sets up this idea that it's not just someone who, like, it's not just about taking the home away, it's about taking that desire to go home away. And then it escalates even further, where John basically figures out that the next place they're going to target is this old hotel that's actually now a homeless shelter, and that's going to be burned. That's going to be where they go next to kill people. So we get this great sequence when John gets there, where it almost looks like all these different ideas representing what the White Martians, like, trying to do, or it's almost like the smoke, or this multicolored smoke, very much like the Martian Manhunter stop, like, color powers, are all hunting people in the building. But there's a great moment when the Martian comes swooping in with John and actually grabs one of these, like, multicolored, like, smoke shapes that look vaguely like a person, and, like, takes it by the neck and starts ripping them apart, almost like the idea that the Martian can, like, fight these telepathic ideas whilst John's, physically running through the building and trying to save the people that are inside. So it's a really big sequence, and the book, we're in issue 3, and every single issue by the end has surprised me at least 2 or 3 times with how it's represented a new idea visually in the art. The art keeps me on my toes in a way that I don't think any book has in a long time, where it keeps doing very inventive things that keep building on the language that it's already established with the reader, where it's like, hey, we've set up that this thing represents this, that this means that, and it keeps building on it and doing new things with it. Really, really cool stuff. So,
yeah. Well, and just the idea that these are, like, the people that are trying to run from the fire, they're almost being paralyzed by it's almost like their own fears. It says, like, they're running from something, and it's a girl hearing, her dad saying, you've made Dad angry, and then poverty and persecution. What's up?
He said, like, 4 times in the span of, like, 5 seconds. It was really quite impressive.
Sorry. Because I'm trying to process all of this stuff at one time, but poverty and persecution and addiction, and it's taking the form of, like, syringes and whatnot. So it's the people are seeing all of their fears come to life, and the Martian just comes in and grabs one by the neck and twists it to death, essentially. And then we see the person that it was affecting, change color, right? is almost like they've come out of that haze. They go from like a dark color when John touches her to like this orangish, right? And again, it's just the art and the colors and everything coming together to effectively tell the story.
Mm. No, it's really well done. And then obviously you get this kind of spokesperson for the White Martian who kind of appears, saying she has a message for the Green One. And we kind of end the issue more or less with this kind of, a bit of a monologue, if you will.
Yeah.
It welcomes you to watch. It loves an audience. Kind of really paints this White Martian as like the White Martian in this book feels like one of the best villains DC's had in a long time. It's yeah, and you go.
It's really hitting the dark side of things, right? Where the concept of dark side being a force of nature, which we'll get on that in a minute, I'm sure. But yeah, it really feels like the White Martian is just a force of nature, and you're really, how do you tackle that, right? And here, yeah, it makes it feel like it's going to be a task to overcome it.
Yeah, and it just sort of plays into what we've been doing visually the whole time with her saying, most people don't get it. It's not about the fire; it's about the smoke. Yeah. So yeah, this woman who was being used to deliver this message collapses all burned into John's arms at the end. And yeah, they've done such a good job of painting the White Martian here as such a ethereal force that's so powerful that it's like, I almost want to like say it's like oh god, I want to compare it a little bit to Kilgrave and Jessica Jones, but in a way a lot worse even. Because Kilgrave had the whole thing where he could tell anyone to do anything he wanted and they'd be powerless to stop themselves. This feels almost worse because this thing doesn't even have to be physically present. Like the White Martian can clearly just send out signals to people and cause these things to happen. And like, it's not even just trying to do it for itself. It's not just trying to do it to make itself more powerful. It's actively trying to erase positive ideas in the world to completely change how we even think. Like its goals are so much more malicious in so many ways. So just, I guess, bravo for really making me give a shit about this threat and making the green, Martian feel like just kind of this like really interesting, mysterious but very welcome force that might help one person counteract the villain is kind of an interesting thing. It feels like there's more to go into with like where they actually come from, because at one point when John asks, like, where did this White Martian come from? He says, oh, it's so far away, it would be pointless to even put it in terms of any, like, distance you would understand. Yeah. So it doesn't sound like they're just coming from Mars. It sounds like they're coming from something very distant and far away, which arguably makes it even feel more ethereal than just a couple of aliens from the nearest planet.
Yeah, right. It's much bigger and it's esoteric, right?
Yes.
And also, I feel like they're building his partner or the other cop, right? Because when the other cop's talking to Jones and he's talking it's a tragedy and whatever, about the homeless people that were burned, John says that, if he keeps going with this negativity from the job, the partner or the other cop, he's like, if he keeps going this way in 6 years from now, his kids will fight him beating his wife to death at the golf club in the garage, right? And one of the last people we see on that page, that's not John or the Martian or the woman on fire, it's him going, oh God, that's horrible. Changing professions, huh? So it's almost as if the White Martian, I took this as the White Martian spreading like a disease, and now this guy's going to be affected because there's already those negative thoughts for the White Martian to jump onto, right? And now he just saw this person on fire as well. So I'm wondering if that's going to set up something between the two of them, right?
I could see it going that way. I actually just read this as him deciding that he was going to stop being a cop. Like this was slightly more positive in the sense that what he's seeing so horrific that he's going to quit and go do something else. But I can see why you're saying that maybe this is like the White Martian going to him. But I guess well, part of me thinks we'll never see him again. So we'll see if he's there next issue, I guess. Yeah.
But yeah, I was just picking up on that just because they're both in the same profession, right? And it's the job now, if we look at through the perspective of the Martian, right? How different it's made them. So, if this is one of the guys he gets into because of that negativity of the world already. You know, I think that's a clever little...
beg the question, though, is there a main host that the White Martian's in, or does any host that the White Martian goes in burn out like this woman? Like, if the White Martian goes into a body, are they going to be dead within minutes, no matter what? So there's not like a permanent host. Be too. Yeah, I'm curious. Right. I don't know an answer to that. I'm just speculating based on what we see here.
Oh, yeah, just like this, it does. It's almost spreading like a virus, right? We saw all the people with the cloudy rings in front of their eyes, around their head. You know, so that's definitely a different way. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe you, like you said, we'll never see this guy again. But you know, it felt like that was the lesson here on this last page. But yeah, and then he also, the first time that we get the Jean Jones kind of spelling that we're used to with the apostrophes and the Z's. You know, it's all in the smoke, but it almost makes it feel like it's like just the way that she's saying things through the White Martian, it's, you know, affecting the speech of the fire, which I thought that was clever as well.
Yeah. So no, super dark art, still just as inventive as it has been, and it's really doing a good job of building the larger narrative of this White Martian villain. So honestly, it's hard to really fault much of any of this. It's one of the best books DC are putting out. What are you giving this issue, Matt?
I'm giving this a 9.
Yeah, I may even go 9.5. Honestly, it's that damn good. It's been a surprise for me, this one. But
I get it.
I'm gonna go with it. Absolute Martian Manhunter, issue 4. DENIZ Camp writing with Javier Rodriguez on the art. Yeah, I don't know why I'm surprised anymore, but like, this is the 4th issue. I sat down to read it and I'm like, okay, obviously this has been phenomenal every time, but for some reason I'm still not convinced it's going to be phenomenal. And then, you know, within a couple of pages I'm like, oh, these ideas are so good, and the way the art's representing them is so good. The White Martian is effectively like they kind of show it as him manipulating the sun. Now, how much you want to literally read that as him manipulating the sun is, you know, open to interpretation, I think. But they bring up metaphor a lot. Like, that's a word that keeps getting used throughout the issue. So I definitely think that we're not meant to be reading this literally, but that through the machinations of the White Martian, that he's controlling the sunlight and the heat and making everybody miserable. Yeah, or at the very least, he's infested the heat of the sunlight with his own stuff. I mean, I think Jean calls it something when he investigates the first crime scene quite early on. But yeah, I mean, we set that up in the first page. We set up the relationship drama with John, the detective, and I loved kind of like the look of her face with all the words on her face and the different colors. You know, all those like telekinesis colors that we've been seeing there to represent the thoughts. One of the things that this book does throughout, and it sets it up on the first page. And then we see it again on the wife on the second page. But then once we see more and more people around in the background, is that because of this sun, which is causing anger, and the crime scene they're investigating is that a spilled cup of coffee led to like multiple people dying, multiple people injured, and it's basically anger. And we see like there's like fuming smoke coming out of everyone's ears because they're all basically on edge, ready to blow up at anyone who pisses them off. And that's what the White Martian, with red cheeks. Yes, and that's what the White Martian's done. And the Martian Manhunter is like, okay, this is a bad idea. This is the white heat of war, he calls it. So that's what's infecting everyone. So there's a lot of art in this issue where he's like investigating the sun or trying to fix it in the background or whatever. And all the art with like him kind of there in various ways is all good. Whether it's like he's like looking up at the sun with like different color lenses that he's made out of the blue, yellow, and red and stuff like that. Just really simple ideas, and then the way it just kind of presents like them going through like this sort of slums area of the city, and the main character's narrating about how it's a very diverse culture. Everyone, like, there's so many languages spoken here. Almost everyone here is either an immigrant or the child of an immigrant, and it's, you know, it's talking about all this stuff and how like it's actually kind of a miracle how much of a nice, friendly place it is. But this anger that's being like concocted with all this stuff that's coming from the sun is forcing like people to start fighting for things that were never problems before. Like at one point it shows you like an English and an Irish pub and like the two gangs outside getting ready to fight. We also like
very gangs of New York.
Yeah, and we intercut with like the stuff with the the marriage and like the fact that he's not staying to talk to his wife, he's sneaking out in the middle of the night, and you're seeing Martian Manhunter like sort of like put his hands into people's heads and like trying to like fix the problems as they're rising up, but they're not like as he puts it, they're temporary fixes. This isn't solving the problem. This is just dealing with the symptoms. And we see like two neighbors who are at war. They've literally built like trenches or like walls along their lawns so they can have warfare between each other. They're firing guns. And there's just some great art in here where like Martian Manhunter is like in one of the guys' heads to like diffuse this fight, and it's presented like it's like a beam of light coming from like the Martian's inside this guy's head, and it's presented with blue art on black as his hands are coming around the guy's head. But the beam of red light from like the Martian eyeball is lighting up like a scene in the guy's head, and the narration explains that this is him showing his neighbor how this is showing this guy how his neighbor helped care for his kids whilst he was at his like mother's deathbed or his wife's deathbed in hospital. So it's just really inventive with how it shows all this stuff. Like every single page I'm kind of like, oh man, they get so creative. Rodriguez is getting so creative with how he shows all this telepathic stuff. It's all really good.
Yeah, and then right after that, in that panel after, because we see like all the telepathic smoke come off, right? And then we see the other incident that that bonded the neighbors when one of them saved the other kid from being hit by a car. Right, jumped out in front of the road, but we see it formed out of that smoke coming out of the mine. So it's just the whole idea that these are like sense memories and stuff, that they're just casually reminding them that their bond is stronger than the anger that they're feeling towards each other.
Yeah, they talk about how like traffic cops are just taking shots at people because they're getting too angry. You know, and you know, all this is like building up throughout the issue, and we see like as it goes on, like he's leaving and not talking to his wife more and more. He's sleeping on the couch by like the third or fourth day, and then she's angry that he's already left in the morning. Like, you know, it keeps bubbling and bubbling, and the Martian Manhunter keeps trying to like solve more of these fights, and then eventually she's like, enough, we're having this fight. You're not sneaking away, and I love that like. All this stuff that she wants to argue with him about are real feelings, but we also know it's heightened because of the sunlight stuff. So she's got the smoke coming from her ears, and her smoke intermingles with his, and we get this kind of like interesting visual. And it's actually while they're having this fight, this very real fight where she says, I think you should stay somewhere else, where Martian Manhunter's fixing this white sun problem, where he's actually fixed it by the end. But the fight's really well done though, like just the way that like there's a panel of her when she's saying stuff where her entire body is covered in those colors that the telepathic smoke usually is, you know, the rainbow colors, and it's like, okay, it's just this idea that she's like feeling everything right now, and she's like doubting stuff, and that's where she says she's starting to like he's never been really good at expressing himself, but this is the first time where she's not been able to just look into his eyes and understand how he feels, so she's actually doubting how he feels about the marriage and his son. And that's when he's like, wait, you doubt? And that surprises him so much. And that page where he says that, it's like her mind's exploding into all these colors. And it's like he's been hit with a nuclear blast of like, oh, I didn't realize it was this serious, that she's actually thinking I might not love her or care about her or care about the son anymore. And he actually just gets down on his knees and like hugs her and says, of course I love you. You know, it's a really well done dramatic scene that they've been building to for like 4 issues now, because the marriage problems have been there every single issue.
So like her posture when she's covered with all the colors is very like insecure, and she's looking down and she's making herself like that. And then when she like explodes and it's like the universe, it's almost like, because he has the Martian vision at that point, right? Because Martian Manhunter's in his eye now. And it's almost like he's seeing her as like, well, no, why do you doubt? You're my absolute universe. He does all this because of her and the kid. Yeah, because it's just not, she's not picking up on it. You know, it's just the chaos that is all those colors. And then now she's no longer in that vulnerable pose, right? her body's angled differently and stuff.
Yeah.
It was just really good storytelling.
Yeah, because what you were saying about like him being in his eye now, like Jean's come back to him, is like that page starts off basically black and white, and then he like goes into his eye, and all you see is the green and red in his eye, and then it's like there's so little color on that page before you get to her covered in those colors that it really pops. And then that next page, which is the sort of the big bang or whatever you want to call it, of him like, you know, realizing that he might have nuked this relationship, and he's like trying to beg and say, hey, no, like, you know, but she's like, hey, I look into your eyes, and it's like it's in a different language now that I can't read. And we know that there's some truth to that because there's something else in there. This Martian is in there, and it's fundamentally changed who he is. So Jean's still fixing the sun during all this, and we see 3 different people, each one bathed in a different color, all preparing explosives. And throughout this scene, we see them go to like an oil plant, a gas plant, and a nuclear plant is another one, right?
Yep.
And
coal, nuclear, and gas.
There you go. And they basically like they take out all of them, and the this whole like anger and just sun rage has all been building to this, because the White Martian's actual goal was not to keep things going like this. This had an end game. The end game here was to take out everything power so that there'd be no light. So they're actually plummeted into the opposite at the end, which is complete darkness. And in the meantime, there's more of the marriage fight. And you know, she gets mad because he's still kind of like, you know, telling lies, saying that he had no choice, but then, you know, says that like, you know, he's doing this for you and you wouldn't understand. But it's like, and then she's like, yeah, but you just said you had no choice in the matter. Like, you said you didn't know, and now you're saying it's because I wouldn't understand. So, and there's this awesome panel as they're having this fight where you see Jean, like, it's like he's making the sunrise like, with his hands. He's picking up the sun over the horizon. And I'm like, just, the art is so just inventive in this. Yeah.
Well, and then after they have the fight, as she's exploding at him, it's where the bombs are going off too.
Yes.
Right? And it almost looks like he's caught up in the explosions and it's completely overtaken him. And then that's where the power goes out.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so again, just some really, really, really cool visual storytelling.
Yeah, obviously it's intermingling the two things together, but it's also just showing just how much of, like, to him, this is his life exploding. This is like, he's been caught in the shockwave of this blast that he wasn't expecting. So yeah, it ends in this kind of downer moment, but then the power goes out and they're in darkness. And the Martian Manhunters, like, thought bubbles say, oh, misunderstood, this was a mistake, the light was a distraction, darkness was the true intent. And yeah, so yes, everything's in plummeted into darkness now, and that's the cliffhanger. So now, I mean, this was just excellent. Again, I think the drama between, like, John and his wife, because there's truth to what she's saying, and you can get why she's frustrated. But you also get why he can't just let her in on what's happening to him, because how could she believe him even if he could somehow prove it? But once again,
I feel it would be worse if he's like, there's a Martian thought form that is living within my brain, and we're trying to solve the mystery of this evil thought form that's manipulating everybody. I feel like she'd get way more mad at that than him saying I've been busy at work.
Now, I guess he could just say, think of a number, and then he'll tell her the number. It'll maybe prove that there's some telepathy going on. But just really exciting stuff here. Like, even when, like, Jean's, like, doing stuff in some of the panels to, like, fix the sun, it's like he's stretching out the white sun to reveal the base RGB colors, and then he kind of, like, reforms them to fix it. I don't know, it's like he's, like, breaking it down so he can put it back together again. Just really good stuff. It feels like, I don't know if I've read a book that looks so quirky in its choices, but everything has so much weight in its meaning to what it's doing, that it just really lands. Yeah, the quirkiness isn't a gimmick. Quirkiness only adds to the story. Also, there's a nice little moment here where Jean is in the roof after he's fixed the sun, and he's looking up at the sky, and it's before the power goes out, so it's nighttime, but there's still lights on, and he's looking up at the moon, and there's a little star, or, well, a little glimmer like a star, and it says Mars. So it does at least suggest that Mars does mean something to him. Even if the White Martian's technically from much further away, maybe Jean does originate on Mars. So it's an interesting little... Because up until now, he's not really said anything about Mars specifically. No. The Martian's just the thing that
Jones calls him.
Yeah.
You know? And then the very final panel, you have the moon with that star again, but now the moon's all distorted, right? And it says darkness was what the white Martian's true intent. So, yeah. So again, is that shiny? Is the thing of Mars, is that just another distraction? Right? Like, what's going on? They got to be on the A game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the Mars thing's irrelevant to the story right now. I think it's just a little moment in between things where we see that he cares about Mars. I mean, the moon looking all wavy, though, like, that could be like, oh, is the white Martian, like, manipulating the moon now so there's less moonlight so that there's true darkness? Or, like, you know, I mean, I could definitely see there's been a lot of, like, big violent crimes in the past few issues, or fires being started and things like that. This one having people murder each other. Now that they're plummeted to darkness, I don't see that getting better yet. I feel like there's still going to be some dark stuff happening next issue. That would be my expectation at the very least. So, yeah, we will see. What are you giving Absolute Martian Manhunter, Matt?
I'm going to 8.5.
Yeah, I gotta go 9. I gotta go 9 out of 10 on this. It's a phenomenal book. It really is something. Not that there's been a lot of Martian Manhunter specific books anyway, but this is easily the best one I've ever read. It's not even like close. So,
I feel that's because Camp and Rodriguez both have a point of view what to do with the Martian Manhunter, and it's not just like it's not a traditional superhero book, right?
No.
John Jones isn't running around with a cape, and you know it is this very weird, heady, you know, type thing where they're going after societal problems, you know, and those symptoms of those. So, which is a great way to use Martian Manhunter, this kind of outsider's eye on things. So.
Oh yeah,
it's a whole lot of fun.
It's a very different take. I do think it's possible to do a good book of the traditional Martian Manhunter if someone really wanted to give it a try, but we've not really had that. But we do have this. We have this very unique, different take on the whole idea. That's very unique because it's not just doing a straight story. It's taken the concept of Martian Manhunter and turned it into something with its entirely its own lore and design language. And it's already influenced the regular stuff because we've already seen that multicolored sort of approach to showing the telepathy of Martian Manhunter. That was in one of the regular books like in the last couple of months. So it's already actually had a little bit of an influence on like just how we show Martian Manhunter doing stuff. Like this is what his powers look like, at least in terms of a comic book art. Absolute Martian Manhunter issue 5, DENIZ Camp, writing with Javier Rodriguez on the R. So the world, or yeah, I think it's the whole world, but at the very least the city is plunged into darkness because the white Martians' plans have taken off. And as per usual,
stole the sun.
Yeah, as per usual with this book, it presents like just people being absolutely darkly vicious in ways that are like you know, we've had people getting set on fire, murders, all that kind of stuff. This issue starts with a page. Now you don't get the full context of all of it until later, but it shows you 3 different villains or people who are affected with the white Martian's influence at the start. One is breaking up little bits of glass to cook with it, right, to put it in food. Someone else in a gas mask has got a bar of Chocos, who we later find out is injecting stuff into them. What they're injecting, who knows, but it's probably bad. And then
it ain't good.
A guy who's in a sort of, I was going to say, it's kind of like a biker jacket, but it's got a clown in the back, so I don't even know if it is a biker jacket, but...
No, he's definitely greaser coated. From the boots up to the leather jacket, it just has a clown on the back.
But he's killing dogs. He's killing dogs, and the transition from that to the next page is that our main character, John, is talking to a woman about her dog going missing, and there's just a shadow of it left on the ground with a blood splatter next to it, and that sets up the other main thing in this issue. So the 2 big things going on is that this eternal blackout is making people go kind of loopy, right? And like more crimes are happening, people are doing bad things. But the other thing that's happening is that people's shadows are kind of like becoming their own thing and are doing their own thing. Some are working with the people that they're attached to. Some are becoming antagonists to the people they're attached to. And we see like even on this page here where this woman's shadow is picking up the shadow of the dog that's been left behind, like almost like nuclear bomb style. But she's crying in the foreground. So it sets up that there's kind of this disconnect between the people in the shadows, and it shows this in such an inventive way throughout the book, where on the next page is like John and Jean are driving through the city. You see a guy who's looted like a mannequin from a clothing store, but his shadows like sort of helping like hold up the back of it. So it's like two people carrying something, and it's like really weird. And given that this book started with this whole idea of the Martians being like this, like almost like non-corporeal being that's inside someone's head, like a second personality, the fact that we're getting to this point where everyone in the city has a second shadow form that's like interacting with them is kind of thematically consistent with what this book's been doing since the start.
Yeah, so I've been through some therapy sessions, and in there you learn about your shadow self, and it's this, from Carl Jung, psychology, and it's not like the negative side of you, it's the stuff that you hide from everybody. It's your shadow. And so when you're doing shadow work, you try to reveal that stuff and why you're hiding it, and so here it's like these are people's shadows going completely haywire because now they don't have to be hidden, right? It's almost these deepest desires. So when we see the guy looting, it's finally he's like given permission to steal. Right now, his shadow's helping him, or all the teenagers stealing stuff and burning it, right? Just causing mass chaos.
It's so funny though, because that's obviously what it represents, is the idea of people let their dark side out because they don't think they can be seen, right? That's kind of what it's going for. But it's manifesting in this weird physical way where the shadow's a separate entity who's literally helping them carry things. It's just really, and there's some people who are arguing with their shadow. We see one guy who's like waving his finger at his shadow, and it's like a whole thing. But yeah, we get this whole like thing throughout the first several pages of explaining kind of the status quo and this gang that kind of worships the light, that so they've got like little torches on their scooters and stuff.
It reminded me of that scene in Batman Forever when Robin steals the Batmobile and he goes to the neon gang. Yeah, it kind of reminded me of them, but they're riding scooters, right? But yeah.
So John's wife is still estranged from him, doesn't want him to be around, and she's just sitting with a shotgun with their son inside their house. But he has the Martian go up and check on her just to make sure she's okay. He kind of admits that she's good at taking care of herself, but he wants her to be checked on anyway, so the Martian's the one looking in. Which I thought was kind of oddly sweet, actually. And the natural light coming off all these like fireflies that are like flying around them felt very different to all the artificial light that other people are using throughout the the streets and stuff that we've been seeing. We come back to some of these earlier characters. The woman who was breaking up glass with a rolling pin is putting it into some cheeseburgers, and it's just lucky that John was going past this place and the Martian's powers kind of sensed that something was afoot. So he comes running in and tells them to not. And there's a great panel here when this woman who's been kind of affected by whatever is going on bolts out the building. There's a panel where John's chasing her, and you've got the multicolored smoke coming out of her ears to kind of imply that the Martian's powers are detecting what she's been doing. But you've also got the shadow of her running down the opposite end of the alley, and the Martian is the shadow chasing the shadow. So it's really sort of showing you that idea of like the Martian's been the shadow to John this entire book, and they're kind of like teaming up now to take on the different entities. One's taking on the physical, one's taking on the shadow form. Such a cool, the art in this book has been so creative and how it like gets these ideas across. It's not that it's doing. It's not that it's not pretty, but it's not like other comics where like, oh, this is just so gorgeous and we have to talk about how much detail there is. This is getting across complex, almost David Lynch ideas in its art style with how it presents things.
One of the first things you learn in film school is that film is collaborative, right? Like the director works with the actors, works with the cinematographer, works with the editor. And I feel like the best comics always come off as collaborative. And I feel like all of our favorite writers work really well with our favorite artists because of that. So I feel like Fernandez here has... I always mess this up. Is it Rodriguez? Rodriguez, I feel like is inputting just as much as Dennis Camp is, right? To make this happen. And just the color work here, like that scene that you're talking about when he busts into the diner and it's the soft blues with the purples and the oranges, right? So that makes the rainbows coming out of the ear, the rainbow smoke, really pop against the rest of it. And it really draws your eye to that. So then when you get to the bottom of the page and it's just the blue with the shadows, you really notice the shadows.
It's also
going the opposite direction.
It's got that Francavilla color scheme as well, where it's just blues and oranges for the most part on that page, except for that the multicolor smoke, which was obviously a recurring thing. So we've got that. We've got the choco bars. This kid wants choco bars, and then we see like this mad scientist, whoever he is, injecting with poison. And they do a whole thing here where he's walking into the store, but John kind of knocks him out of his hand on the way out and chases him. But this child who wanted one picks one up off the ground. So we're kind of left hanging as if this, does this kid eat this and die? We don't actually know. It's kind of left lingering.
That's his son, too.
No, it's not.
That's Tyler.
Is it?
Yes, it is. He's got the orange hair and everything.
Oh, they should just call him Tyler. You're right. Okay, I didn't think it was the mother and son. Very good.
That's the only way I picked it up, because of she called him his name. And then I looked, I was like, oh, he does have orange hair, doesn't he?
I just thought it was a random, woman and son. I didn't think it was like his family. That's interesting. Yeah. So that's even more creepy then. But you get a bunch of other stuff where they're looking into various buildings and there's just bad things happening, people scared. And ultimately an ambulance runs John down in the street. And he goes flying into the wall. So you get this whole thing here where like the Martian's kind of separated from him. He's down on the ground, and it's actually more people with these clown jackets getting out who want to come over and amputate him. They're talking like the doctors, but they're not really. And John even says, "Are you a doctor?" And he's like, "I've got no idea."
How the hell should I know?
So very, very kind of sort of disorientating and creepy. So he's very vulnerable here, and it's almost like the Martian's in this black void trying to climb back to him to help him. So very, very good in that sense. But yeah, the cliffhangers as we get towards the end of the issue are kind of wild. So one is that there's a knock at the door where the wife is, and the kid's asleep on the couch, and she looks very and that's a great panel where the knock's inside her head, so you can sort of get this idea of like. It's almost like, when you get like startled by a knock at the door and it obviously stings into your ear. This kind of gives you that vibe because it's literally in her head and her eyes looking over. So it's a really good piece of art in that sense. However, the Martian, as he's crawling looking for like what's going on and maybe try to get back to John, he kind of follows a lead. He kind of sees something weird and cosmic happening. We see it reflected in his eye. So John's in trouble because this idiot with a buzzsaw is about to cut into him. So we'll see how that wraps up next time. But the big cliffhanger with the Martian is that he kind of like sees what's happening to the world, and he kind of like looks up, and whether or not this is like the White Martian's working with them, or it's like a separate thing, and the like White Martian's just a part of the chaos that's happening that's feeding into what he's doing. But for the first time in the Absolute Universe, we see Darkseid. Darkseid's first real appearance here unless I'm forgetting something, is in Absolute Martian Manhunter, and it's almost like all of the worlds which are made up of these like colors that have been in the smoke, I guess representing the idea, it's the idea of the worlds, are all like floating towards Darkseid's hands, and like his white hands are kind of consuming them. And it's almost like Darkseid's like sucking in like everything in the universe because it's all fueling Darkseid. And it makes me wonder if like part of like Darkseid's big return is that he's eventually going to consume the entire Absolute Universe and it's going to fuel him. And like this is something that the Martian Manhunter stumbled onto and is seeing what the root cause of what the White Martian's doing is. Now, is the White Martian working for Darkseid? Is the White Martian just part of this universe that is inherently feeding into what Darkseid is? I don't know the answer to that, but this was a hell of a visual. And it took me a second as well where I'm like, who's this? And I'm like, wait, is that Darkseid?
Well, because I looked at the face and I was like, that's not a White Martian. It's not white, right?
Yeah.
And then I looked and I saw the forehead and it clicked. And I was like, oh man. And then even the like, he has like the pits on him that are putting up that red smoke.
Yeah, do you know what it almost felt like to me? It felt like he's consuming all of these worlds that are full of different colors, and whatever he's doing, like it's just coming out red. It's almost like he's expelling just red. It's almost like he's turning it all just into hate or anger or whatever.
It's the Omega Force, right? It's whatever he's using to fuel this universe. Because when the Manhunter gets knocked through this, or the Martian gets through, he says that it has something to do. Where was it? Before light, pre-creation, it was right, and the narration comes in that's different from what the Martian's saying. It says the White Martian has trapped trapped us all. So I'm wondering what this has to do with the White Martian. Is he being able to essentially exploit the fact that Darkseid's doing all of this, right? And through this, it's feeding the White Martian. Like, just the whole premise of Darkseid is, and the anti-life is kind of fueling what the White Martian is doing. And now they're kind of trapped in this kind of reverb echo, right? And it's this that, by, like you said, almost by accident, the Martian has found that Darkseid is the point of creation for this universe. And he calls it, the obscene dreamer, creation's burning tiger force, the cosmic secret origin. Right?
Yeah.
And
it's interesting because it's almost like he's discovering that creation itself is flawed because this entity's at the center of it. It's not like something good. And I especially like, in that last page, after we get that full page spread, John lying there about to be cut into mumbles Darkseid is. It's this idea that, the Martian is still inside him. He's still connected to him. So he's mumbling this as the Martian's like sort of seeing inside the universe, or however you want to phrase it. Like, is it? I mean, it's kind of metaphysical to actually describe what's going on here. But hell of a cliffhanger.
Yeah,
Didn't see it coming.
And the way that he says it as dark side, it merges it with this whole concept of the shadow self, right? Of the dark side of your being.
It's also upside down, as we should probably mention that as well.
And it's upside down. And then the Martian is beginning and everything, right? So that's a whole vibe that we get that again, like we did in Superman.
That was the thing that made me feel like this is like, whatever Darkseid's doing is going to ultimately destroy the absolute universe if he's not stopped. Is this idea it's the start of the apocalypse? But I like that read on the Darkseid is though this idea that it's hyphenated because like these shadows represent everyone's dark side. So that's kind of what's happening here. I would never have predicted that Absolute Martian Manhunter would have started feeding into the Darkseid stuff before anything else really did from the Absolute side, but I'm pleasantly surprised, and it fits so well thematically into everything that it's been doing that it feels so natural.
Yeah, it doesn't feel forced. It felt like even if this was just a miniseries, this was the first breadcrumb that was dropped, was through Martian Manhunter because of what they're exploring.
This would have been the penultimate issue had it only been 6. Now, maybe they've rejiggered things a little because they knew they were getting more at a certain point, but you could see the next one being the last one and it being, wrapped up quickly. But obviously, I'm glad that they're getting 12 issues to really flesh this out.
Well, and we keep talking about the cosmic horror of Darkseid. This really hits that as like that version of Darkseid is something that we're not meant to see, right? And it would make the normal brain go insane. But to the Martian, right? This is the type of stuff that he's meant to see, I don't
even know if he is meant to see it. Like, it feels like he, gets to it.
Yeah, but he's able to perceive it in a way that we wouldn't be.
But I don't think he's meant to see it though. As what No. I
misspoke. I meant perceived, right? Because that whole thing in cosmic horror that you cannot perceive the old gods, right?
Yeah.
These are beyond description or whatever, and that's what drives humans mad. Is here, it's kind of that version of Darkseid, and it's through the Martian that we're able to see it. So just again another solid outing from Dennis Camp.
Yeah, it's excellent stuff. It was such a surprise when it started. I didn't really know Dennis Camp's game. I was unfamiliar with it, but I apologize for that. Matt, what are you giving Absolute Martian Manhunter issue 5?
I'm gonna give this a 9. This was really good.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I'm even tempted to go 9.5. I'll stay with a 9, but like I'm even tempted to nudge it a bit higher. Spectacular stuff. Really tough to follow. Absolute Martian Manhunter, issue 6, DENIZ Camp and Javier Rodriguez on the art. So this is the first or the last issue before a bit of a break. So this was meant to be 6 issues to begin with, and then they announced quite proudly after the first issue came out and it was a hit, oh hey, DC's given us up to issue 12. So it makes sense there's a bit of a break between 6 and 7 because this was unplanned. And if, a bit of a break is what keeps, Rodriguez doing all the issues, that is perfectly fine. Obviously, we have, frankly, a stunning issue here. This was phenomenal.
Yep. Absolutely.
We have obviously continuing the cliffhangers from last issue, which is the weird, crazy doctor character trying to cut into John. But then you also had the wife and son at the house with someone, under the influence of the White Martian coming in to attack them. And all that's really good. There's some really good layouts there. I particularly like the page where the wife and son went up to the attic, and the way that the panels make the shape of it like a house, but the triangles kind of show the chase happening and it going from purple to blue. Just really smart stuff that really felt like it flowed. And all of this is to say that ultimately the Martian, Jean, if you will, basically when he steps in to say, yeah, I will help you, partner, accept my help because we are together on this, he's able to use his powers to send John through the White Martian that's attacking him, the person who's under the White Martian's control. So we get this insane panel of John coming out of the head of the White Martian character that's chasing the wife and son. Because actually before this, she shoots off this guy's head and a white bubble just appears, a white sphere, to show that the White Martian is still puppeting this guy. And some of the dialogue from this character even just appears in the head as if that's the speech bubble. So again, it's still playing with art, and I've not even gotten to the good stuff yet. This is and this is good, but it's not even the great stuff yet. There's even better stuff coming as far as inventive art and concepts goes. But this issue, it feels like a climactic issue, not the end of the story, but climactic in the sense that it kind of closes out the arc of him and his wife, because by the end of this issue, it's no, we're a team. He wants to open up to her and be honest. She hears him talking to someone, which we know is Jean the Martian. So either that'll happen between issues or we'll get that next time. But it really feels that this issue does close off that first half of the story in that, no, the marriage problems are taking a turn here at the end. And obviously there's stuff to talk about with the kid, which we'll get to as well. But this first chunk was all just tension. It was all just he's in danger, the wife's in danger. He's trying to fight off this weird maniacal surgeon, she's trying to run away from this thug that's broken into the house, and then kind of everything coming together feels kind of exciting. And then we get to the really big ideas, because when John knocks down the White Martian guy, we get this great panel because he says, oh, you've got backup, and in the art you see the Green Martian Jean behind him, right, represented. And the next page, the next panel, he's like, oh, I've got backup too. And arguably, this is the first time we're really seeing the White Martian properly, because we've had things that have represented the White Martian. We've had vague kind of ideas of him, but here we get this black body with the white circular head, sort of towering behind him.
And so what we'd seen before was kind of that stereotypical great alien kind of vibe.
Yes.
So I thought it was cool that we didn't go to that. It's just still this empty white circle. It's almost like it's nothingness, and it's not even darkness, right? It's this bright white where there's nothing there. So I thought that was a really cool representation of all the bad things the White Martian's been doing. It's just because it's nothingness.
And then immediately as soon as that's revealed, all the mob that's kind of forming outside the house, all of their heads that are now just white circles, it's kind of represented in the art. These are all being influenced and controlled, or at least heavily manipulated by the White Martian's thoughts. He's speaking into their ears. He's convincing them to be bad people, do bad things. Whereas Jean, by comparison, is only attached to one person and is trying to help that one person. It's not about controlling the masses or anything like that. But so it's hey, you have to run upstairs with the son, and she's no, I want to help. We're partners. We're in this together. But he's no, I need to do this myself. So the next part of the issue is where things get really cool. Because basically, the White and Green Martian, who are supersized, at least in the art, representative to everything else, basically have a kaiju fight above the city. Obviously, it's not literal. And this actually happens as the fight goes on. It's actually happening in the minds of everyone in the city. It's like they're basically fighting in the subconscious or in the minds of everyone who's there. And we see that throughout the issue represented in the eyeballs of the various characters, where it's almost like they're going from mind to mind and they're battling for the ideas of everyone. And then eventually they start using people's dreams and ideas as weapons against each other. This is amazing. It's so good.
Well, and in the scene where we see them as kaiju standing over the city, right? They're doing a helicopter flying around their feet, which is, again, very kaiju iconography. But John says for them, things made of pure mind, it can all get a little abstract. A punch is not just a punch up there. It's a metaphor. And so it's just this whole idea that this is a battle of ideas.
Yeah.
Right? And that those ideas are not spreading, but fodder for whatever this fight is going to be, right? Because, like you said, they start using their dreams, their hopes, their fears, almost as ammo against each other.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
the very next page where, so obviously down below, John is just like punching the guy that's being controlled by the White Martian, because it says down here everything's literal, a punch is a punch. But you have the very next page is where it starts talking about how the White Martian is taking this terminal boy who's having a nightmare about his brain cancer, his brain tumor, and he basically has this giant tumor in a city. That's what the boy's having a nightmare of, is this tumor like just taking over the city, and the White Martian's trying to use it as a weapon. But then the Green Martian, Jean, he pulls out the cancer, right? And fights it because a girl that lives in the same building in 25 years or whatever is going to develop a cure for brain cancer, and he fights the idea with the idea that it can be defeated. And then you see that play out in a couple of different ways. The White Martian pulls like a nuclear bomb out of the nightmare of some hippie who's old, who still thinks about, the scares of the 60s and all that. And then Jean goes into the same person's mind and also takes the idea that he also thinks the US military is incompetent, so the bomb just ends up being a dud and doesn't actually go off. And it's like, this is nuts, because it's like, these aren't literally happening, but it's the idea that if the bomb did go off, it would affect everyone's minds, because it would be an idea that spreads throughout them.
Right.
This is so, it's kind of like, I'm trying to like describe like different things to compare it to, or like what is, it's like a little bit of David Lynch. There's a little bit of like a quirkiness to it. There's a little bit of this and that. And it's
But there's not enough of it to call it Lynchian, right? It's basically, it's very much its own thing, because we're seeing a philosophical battle, right? Where the Green Martian represents all the positive side, especially to John Jones, the cop, right? He's justice, he's fairness, he's all those things. And the White Martian is that hopelessness and terror and all the bad things that we've seen him do through those first 5 issues. And we're watching those two philosophies fight over the crowd, right?
Yeah.
And they're using that crowd as the source for these things. So we're actually seeing a philosophical battle play out back and forth. And I never thought we'd get to be able to see that in like comic form.
Yeah, I mean, going back to that idea of like everything's abstract to the people down below, and the page where the guy looks up at them, and there's two things about this page. One is that the big panel of the fight from like the low angle looking up, it does just look like a bunch of abstract shapes. It looks like nonsense. In a good way, though. It's great art. But then the panels going down the side of that page, the guy looking up, whose perspective we're perhaps seeing, the reflection in his eyeballs, we see the White and Green Martians come out of his eyes and fight over his nose. And it's moments like this where I'm just like, oh, this is so inventive. This is just playing with every idea that it has. And then, of course, they do the thing where, like, the White Martians like feeding off everyone. We see all the white smoke go up to the big white circle in the sky, and we also have John getting beat up by the crowd, and he's almost going to get killed. And then it's the wife, blasting the shotgun at the gunman, and she's like, "No, we're in this as a team. Like, we're going to be there for each other." And that's happening. And obviously, as this is playing out, their son, because we set up that the chocos with the poison in them, or whatever it was, something was injecting into the chocos last issue, and the kid ended up with them. We see him go for the chocos, and like this is playing out as seemingly we're having a big uplifting moment in the battle, because it's this moment where Jean, basically because John like kind of like makes up with his wife and sort of says, you know what, you were right, we're supposed to be a team. I can't, you know, I shouldn't be hiding anything from you. And then immediately the Green Martian goes, yes, finally at last. And it's almost like because he's achieved, like, he's like almost like fixed his mind, like the thing that was blocking him from like being the husband, and he's finally had this realization. He's finally come to some sense of peace or the right path, whatever you want to call it. This allows Jean to like sort of increase his power with him, and he's like, was it Martian vision upgrade? And it basically sort of does this thing where all of the people start having the multicolored smoke coming out of their ears again, and it's kind of like they're all being shifted to the other side of the war, or if you want to call it that. So just a wild conceptual couple of pages, and it just kind of feels like, okay, you know, it's kind of that idea of like, this main character's had all these self-doubts, he's not been able to open up and talk to his wife the whole arc, and it's when he finally gets some self-realization, some self-worth, where now the possibilities are endless now, right? It's just there's a giant metaphor for getting over your own mental health issues and like finding your own self-strength and all that.
Right, and because they call it an I'm going to trip over this word even if I read it. They call it in the text an epiphantic, like an epiphany, breakthrough, consciousness expansion achieved. So it's like he's seeing the whole picture now, right? It's not just about him and his wife. He realizes that they're a piece in all of this, and now that he can get over this and start to fix himself, that's what allows the Martian fully in, and for him to unlock his full potential. And the way that plays out with all the different colors that we've seen throughout the city, right? Again, in all the first 5 issues of this, those are all coming together to combat this white smoke. And it's super, super cool. The other thing that I like real quick are these little pieces of the art that, we've only seen the Manhunter, right? The Green Martian with one eye. When John Jones has that breakthrough, one of his eyes is swollen shut from the fight. And then the big Martian eye is on his eye. So now John only has one eye too. So it shows that they're in, one there too. I thought that was a really cool art piece.
Yeah. And you can see kind of like there's like one of the people with the soldier helmet on in the bottom of that page. You can see his face is half white Martian and half green Martian, kind of battling it out, like the fight's really happening. But of course, as this is all happening, we see their kid on the floor. It looks like he was having a seizure. I thought the kid was dying. I thought that he was just
I so too, but then you see it's like it looks like white smoke coming from his mouth, right?
Yeah. Well,
so I thought he was foaming.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I thought he was like foaming from the mouth. That's what I thought that was. But and then of course, like but to go back to the big grand fight, because everything gets to be metaphor. Because if words fail, that's what it says. If words fail, you can do something with metaphor. And the Green Martian, once we're back to kaiju representation, grabs the crescent moon and slashes the white Martian in the face with it. Again, just glorious. It's big, it's bold, it feels super. It feels like it's so playful, as we keep saying, but it all like there's never that much of a confusion about the depth of what it means. It always feels like there's a lot of weight behind it. It never just feels like flashy for flashy's sake. There's always solid storytelling ideas behind why we're representing the things this way, and it's enhancing the story. It's to compare it to like an action movie. The action's supposed to drive the story forward, not just be there for action's sake, right? That's what this is like. Like, this could be flashy without having like a purpose and just being flashy because, we've got a fun art idea, but it doesn't really help advance the story. No, every single time in this book, there is something that you could call flashy in the art. It's helping advance and enrich what the story is.
Yeah.
So there's kind of like a victory in that sense. However, the thing that's lingering, the cliffhanger for next time, obviously John's promising his wife that he's going to explain everything to her. I'm kind of hoping we get parts of that conversation next issue, at least when it comes back. Yep. But the final reveal, of course, as they're watching the sunrise, the kid seems to be okay, right? The kid seems to be fine. However, it did this in one of the other issues. It was like, hold this page up to the light thing. Obviously, digitally, you just get the pages at the end represented the way they're supposed to look. But it's basically showing you that the kid now has the white Martian in him. That's whatever the injection was. It was to get the white Martian into. So their son now has white Martian, and he's pretending to be okay.
Yeah, and so I took that as, even though they were triumphant, that piece that the White Martian represents, all that hopelessness and whatever, because of the poison that was put into those chocos, it's still around, right? You're never really going to be able to get rid of it, and now it's affecting his personal inner circle right now. It's his kid. So yeah, I'm gonna have to pick this up from the store because this is one I typically read. I get the physical as well, and I'm gonna have to get it to see what this page is supposed to look like. Because I'll be honest, it didn't dawn on me that the White Martian had taken over the kid. Looking just at the art, it was because of how those pages work, and I'm sure it works better in the physical, right, with how it goes out. But here it's just like, okay, I kind of get it, but I can't really make up the image in my eye, but it does make a lot of sense, Yeah, really, really, really fantastic stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have an issue with reading the digital version of this. Like, I mean, the shape over the eye, the grin over the face. Like, I think it's pretty clear that what it's saying here. It's basically saying no, the White Martian kind of still lives on, and it's infected the kid. The White Martian's not gone, and now it's more sinister. And you can maybe even read into it is like, okay, the parents are getting over this stuff, but all those doubts were theirs, and you kind of pass that on to your children in some way, which is maybe what the metaphor is, if you will. So, no, I mean, honestly, like, I have nothing but praise for this. Like, I think the fight is so inventive. Like, both in the sense that you're looking up and seeing kaiju things happen over the top of the crowd, and then when it's using the IDs of the people, the dreams and the nightmares of the people to fight each other. And then ultimately, even like the battling in and out their faces and all that stuff. And then the character payoffs to like John and his wife feels like it's been really earned after these 6 issues, and it really makes it feel like things are going to have a nice new status quo and be shaken up when we come back for the second half of the book. So, no, this was fantastic. I have nothing but nice things to say about this, both in writing and in art. So, shouldn't be surprised, I guess, after how much we've been praising it for the first 5 issues. No. But this, I mean, it's not the landing per se because we still have another half, but it feels like a TV show. It feels like the mid-season finale in a lot of ways, and I think it really landed that.
It's really good though that it did get extended, and we get this sense of resolution here for the first arc. Yeah, like that played out. DENIZ Camp really played with that. Like, leaned into it, because I could see how this would have ended if it didn't sell well and he still got the 6 issues out.
Do you think it just they wouldn't have done the kid cliffhanger? It would have just been like the fight would have still happened, and then it would have just ended on this hopeful note. Oh, we're going to talk things through, and I could have seen that.
Yeah, and there's still a resolution there, and we still have this concept of Martian Manhunter in the absolute universe and stuff. But I'm curious to see where it goes, because that little thread of the parents are fixed their problems, but that problem now, something's impacted the kid, right? Every action has a reaction, and in this form, it's now this evil thought entity working its way into your kid. So curious to see where that goes, especially with his little emo hair going on, covering his one eye. Just definitely primed for evil kid syndrome,
Yeah, but just to be clear here, though, it's not the parents' fault this has happened to him. That's just the metaphor. That's just the analogy for like parents' issues getting passed down to their kids. And the actual plot, it's it's obviously this sinister evil villain who's done this. But anyway, no, fantastic, really great stuff. It's been nothing but a surprise since issue 1, and it keeps surprising, which is very impressive indeed. What are you rating Absolute Martian Manhunter issue 6?
Here's my thing. I don't know if I should give it a 9.5 or a 10. So I was gonna see where you go and then adjust my rating to there.
Well, you don't have to adjust because of me, Matt. You don't have to.
No,
match.
But it is one of those things where I don't want to overdo it and just give it the 10, right? But it is kind of a masterpiece in storytelling, But I could understand. I can also give it the 9.5 because some things didn't quite work out. But yeah, I'll just go for it and give it the 10.
Okay. You commit before I step in. That's why I made you go first. I don't want to influence your score.
Yes, I know.
That's the whole idea. I know I won't be influenced by yours. I'll stand my ground. No, it's a 10. Let's move on.
Okay, that's fine.
It's a 10. It's one of the best issues we've read on the show, and I remember the last time I gave an issue a 10 on the show, and there's been a lot of good comics.
Mine definitely was an absolute Wonder Woman. I know that much.
Yeah, I didn't for that. I rated it highly, but like I'm not handing out 10s willy nilly like some 10 slut. Like you earned the 10. Damn it. Absolute Martian Manhunter issue 7, DENIZ Camp, writing with Javier Rodriguez on the art. So yeah, we got Absolute Martian Manhunter back after a little bit of a break. So it's nice to have it back, and it's, immediately doing a lot of its weird little things with layouts and little interesting ways it presents certain moments and panels, and how it presents ideas. Like sometimes the colored smoke just forms like an image itself, or sometimes, for example, their kid is like 10 foot tall in the first panel for some reason, and I don't really know why initially, but that's okay.
Well, I feel like he's the elephant in the room.
Yes,
right.
I mean, I think that's the gist of it. Yeah, is that he's what's weighing over them in the moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also a dream, to be fair, as well. So it's not like it has to follow any rules, regardless. But
yeah. I really like the combination when it's John and the Green Martian together, like they're on that page, like the one where he's looking into the mirror, and it's got the 5 o'clock shadow on the Green Martian face, and you're just like, what is going on here? Like is this what he's seeing himself as now? As he's this combination being, or, is he feeling outside of his body? Like, what does this actually mean?
I mean, yeah, I'm not even sure if he's seen it. I could see this just being like a representation for us, or the idea that he is becoming more and more alien to everything around him. So he's looking to us like more and more of the Martian himself. But he's alone. He's not living with his wife and kid right now after the events of the previous issues, and he's obviously depressed about that. He's like telling himself that he's going past his old house just to look in on the way to work, and the Martian narration counteracts that by saying this is the opposite direction to work. There's a lot of that going on in the first half of the issue, where the Martian will do his own narration, or whatever you want to call it, but it's like revealing the truth, and whereas John's narration is very much like the lie. It's the not like in a bad way, just like him lying to himself, or whatever it is. So yeah, so there's a lot of that going on. They're talking about murders. There's a lot of again showing this idea that he's thinking about his family constantly. There's a panel where he's driving through the city, and there's just like giant versions of his wife just in between the buildings, like sort of like talking, yelling, fighting, whatever you want to call it. So no, all that's good stuff. And you see that she's also kind of struggling with it as well. She's on the phone to her mother, presumably, and the kid notably looks very creepy as he's making little Play-Doh.
He's dark.
Yeah, Martian things. He's been affected by that candy that he had. That was
the White Martian.
Yeah.
And like all the things that he's making too, they look like they're all different colors, right? Mixed together. So they're also reminiscent of that kind of the thought smoke that's coming out of people.
Yeah, and
like these thought forms.
We have a new thing that's introduced here visually, which is like a different color scheme that represents something else. And we see it a couple times in the issue. So when he goes to work, he says, hey, has this place been remodeled? Because remember, he was on suspension or on leave for like a couple of months, right? So he's going back. He's like, has everything changed? And the receptionist is like, no, it's just the way you left it. And he's just walking in the sort of the into the main part of the building. There's a lot of like gray, black, and red kind of, not smoke, it's more kind of angular, but it's kind of reminiscent in the sense that it feels like it's representing something. And you see it again, you actually see it again in the office when he's talking to his boss, but you see it again like separately later on when he's looking at people, and it's like a cloud that's going past their eyes. But again, it's not that, the 5 like bright colors that all the other smoke's been. It's this gray, black, and red color scheme, and it's almost like if the bright colors are representing seeing thoughts and seeing stuff that is coming out of their heads, this color scheme seems to represent stuff that's hidden, like stuff that he can't see, or stuff that's whether or not because something's actually blocking it or he's just blinded to it, but he's not seeing, he can't read these people's eyes. This work feels alien to him, so he's seeing, at least that's how I interpret it so far. We've only had a couple of examples of it in this issue, so it feels like a new, thing in the creative language of the book that they're going to start whipping out to mean something different as we go forward here.
Yeah, because in the FBI building, when he goes down the hall, it almost looks like a labyrinth design with the black, right? Like there's all these dead ends, and it's like purposefully confusing. And then when he gets into the boss's office, his desk is made up of the same design, and behind him, so it's almost like this is someone that's obscuring something, on purpose. Versus when you see the people walking around with like the haze, it's the same colors, but it's lacking that design, right? Doesn't have that labyrinth style, in on those. So yeah, so I'm wondering if it has something to do with, again, with this hidden, obfuscation.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not convinced it's something that's actively doing it to him, though. I was kind of reading this more as there's things that he's just starting to become blinded by because he's changing so much, because he's thinking about things differently, because he's estranged from his wife, so he's starting to not see things in the way that he used to. And like the idea with the people having it over their eyes is like he can't read people the way he used to, maybe, or something like that. I mean, maybe this could be like a White Martian influence or something, but it felt like to me not that, because it feels like the opposite of the bright colored ones, and the bright colored ones have always been about revealing truth. It's always about revealing what's actually in people's heads, and this is the opposite of that. This is like hiding things that are there. Right.
And the fact that it's coming from the FBI and his boss and that type of stuff too is the first place that we see it. It's stuff that's not meant to be seen and whatnot. And then when we get to the people, though, with him not being able to read it, it's almost like they're walking around in a daze, because he says, after their experience with the Martian vision, a brief and intense euphoria flooded into the city. To know and be known is a powerful thing, I guess. But after a while, the euphoria faded, gradually shading into shame. And then that's the people that are walking around with like this fog almost, right? Like this dense thing around them.
I think the key point I'm trying to get at, though, is this is not something the White Martian's done to them directly. It's like a natural after effect of the absence of what the White Martian did to them. So this is like more of like I guess what I'm trying to say is this more represents something that occurs naturally in a person. It just so happens that it's occurring to a lot of people because they all went through this same experience. Like, I don't want to just call it depression necessarily, but the idea that it's like a real human thing that they're all feeling.
Yeah, it's almost like they went through the same thing together, and there's almost like a hangover from it, right? It's almost like their entire belief system were challenged, and now they had this whole euphoria, and then that euphoria went away, and now they're just kind of walking around in this daze. Because then we get to the page where they talk about how the White Martian's dead, but the Martian's like, no, death is a physical process. I said, we Martians do not have a death concept. Life, death do not apply. And it says White Martians cannot be completely killed, destroyed, refuted, only weakened, contained, and transformed. And that page, right, it looks like this Martian figure who's in the red and gray and white that we've seen, right, with all the maze labyrinth thing, is like pouring this white almost paint stuff onto the city. So it's definitely whatever the White Martian did, it has definitely been transformed. It's not what it was. It's this new different take on it. And and we get anytime we got the Martian hanging out of the police car, I think it's a good time. And on the bottom of that page is he's hanging out and looking at the people.
Yeah, that full page spread where it looks like the Martian is like up there, but to me, like the coloring there looks more like he's being lit in those colors as opposed to he is those colors, if that makes sense. And yeah, he's playing with this puddle of because I took this as the Green Martian up top, who's just lit in these colors.
Okay.
And it's almost like he's trying to sort out all this residue that's been left over by the White Martian, but it's all dripping over the city anyway because it's too hard to contain it.
Gotcha.
But I mean, I could be misreading that. Maybe your way of reading it is right, but that's how I interpreted that. Just because it still looks like... Because the White Martian didn't look the exact same as the Green Martian before, I don't think.
True.
Whereas this one definitely has the same kind of head as the Green Martian. So
yeah.
But either way, you're right about the color scheme though. It's definitely that, you know, red, black, gray, you know, and then the hands are coated in like the white paint, if you will. Okay, I'll make one joke. The giant pool of jizz that's dripping all over the city. So I want to just go back and I want to gloss over the page where he's at work for the day, and it's like the panels make up like a building where his desk is sitting on the top of the building, and then all the panels of the windows going down the building, and then he's at the bottom, and it just sort of represents this idea of the mountain, the tower of work that he has to go through, all this paperwork. It's just a really fun, inventive page. I was into it. I just wanted to mention it. It was really nice.
No, it's real good because he talks about, like, despite working on it for 10 hours, it seems to have gotten even bigger. Right? And just so the way that this is drawn, it looks like it's forever tall, even though it's only 4 panels, right? Or if it's a grid of 4. But yeah, it looks like this gargantuan thing. So well, it's that point home. It's
a perspective thing because it's obviously it's angled in a way where it feels like it's really tall, despite only being 4 panels tall, if you will. So later on, and then the car still, the Green Martian like grabs his head, and again, this is more of a visual representation than anything, but it's like he's trying to show or explain, kind of like so we see this beam, and it goes through a bunch of like prisms, and it hits this black prism, and this light, this energy, whatever you want to call it, it splits. Now, through the prism, we get the 5 bright colors that make up all of the thought color smoke that we've been seeing since issue 1, right? That comes out the other side. But on the side that it goes in, the ricochet that comes off is 2 colors, and that's white and green, which is obviously the color of the 2 Martians. I think this is... I have no idea what to make of this page, other than it's clearly trying to start to hint at the idea of, like, like there's some type of... I don't want to say energy, but like it's trying to, like, build a mythology here, but it's only just teasing it in some simple way. But because these colors have been such a big part of the book up until now, it still felt like it meant something. Like, I still felt like, okay, I understand this to some extent, that they're 2 sides of the same kind of coin or kind of thing.
Yeah, it's weird because it's not white, right? So if we were dealing with light, like in, let's say, the Green Lantern books, all the colors make up white. That's not what's happening here. The white shifts off too from the original beam.
Yeah, don't think of a Green Lantern here at all. This is clearly not following the same rules or ideas of that. It's definitely not.
Right. And so when it hits to that rock, it almost like goes through and comes out the yellow, blue, red, orange, and like pink. And then the green and the white go off in the other direction.
That's why
definitely something.
I don't think it's light. Like, I think that's the thing to keep out your mind here, is that this is not light. This is energy. Maybe this is just the life force itself. Maybe this is something specifically Martian. I don't know. But having said that, all these colors that come out of the heads all come out of human heads. So I think it's maybe something that's more universal to everyone as opposed to specifically them. But it shows that they are separate from it, and that's maybe why they can see these colors or something. But very interesting visual representation, but that we don't quite understand just yet. But like really tantalizing in and of itself, just in the moment. Anyway, he ends up crashing his car whilst he's been given this vision, because of course he does. And at the end, as we're getting towards the end of the issue here, the kid's still playing with these weird like claymation dolls that he's made, and he looks evil as shit. The wife,
yes, he does. He had that dark eyeliner going on.
The wife is outside smoking, and like her smoke is kind of like forming like her and her husband. And like, there's kind of like, and it basically reveals that he's tried to explain to her what's going on. Like, he's just like a flashback that she's thinking about, where it's like, Martians in your head? You're sick, John. You sound dangerous. Like, it's sort of revealing that he's had this conversation with her, and it's led to like her kicking him out. And then we see them both kind of like side by side, and the Green Martian's kind of looking down on both of them effectively as it goes. There is like a little moment here though where there's eyes staring at him through the cracks of the ceiling, so it's teasing a presence that's keeping an eye on him that's not just the Green Martian. So
right.
So that's something to mention. Then it does the whole trick again where there's one page. Digitally it's 2 pages, but physically it's one page where if you hold it up to a light, you see a secret second image. And it basically shows that on one version, it's just John on his own, getting ready for bed and then lying on his own, and it's very lonely. And then the other version, it's the wife and kid, but it's all lined up so that they're just, they're kind of at a similar table. She's lying in the bed behind them if you put them together, kind of thing. And it's showing that they're both lonely right now, that they're both feeling this separation. It's not just him. It is affecting her as well. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, I like on the page where they're both smoking, right? She's outside, he's at that hotel, right? And it says, "You need help." And then it says Martian Vision. And then I'm assuming if you look at it in the Martian Vision, it shows them together instead of being alone, right? And so it's like this thing, like, he needs to be with her as much as she needs to be with him, right?
Well, that page is not a Martian Vision page, though, to be clear. It's the page after that.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. So it's when it says "You need help," right? That's what is going on in her brain. But then their smoke cloud connects as the Green Martian, and it says the Martian Vision. And then the message that we get from the Martian Vision, I'm sure if we look through it, is them needing to be together. Yeah. It's the isolation is what's making, so I like how that works. I need to pick this up physically so I can see what this looks like, because my brain's having a hard time putting it together, I
mean, I don't know. It made sense to me. Because this works just as well as 2 pages. If you imagine they're both like on either side of the same 2-page, like open, like it makes sense. It's just repeated panels of like the same kind of sequence, but with each character separately. Then there's a couple of pages at the end, which feels very different to the rest of the book, actually, where there's some figures in weird outfits doing some alien probing, as it were, but then it kind of seems to reveal that this is actually just a really bad person and a group of characters who makes things look like alien abductions to get rid of people. Or because he's on the phone, like basically accepting a job, and then the guy in the table who thinks he was abducted by aliens is realizing, wait, you're not all aliens, and then they just sort of casually shoot the guy in the head, and so this is someone hiring this guy and his team for maybe for John specifically, maybe someone else, hard to tell, but. Interesting idea to introduce here at the end of this, because obviously we're at the start of the second half here. This is a kind of a new arc, but still obviously related. But this felt like a new element to introduce. We had the black, red, and grey kind of new thing mechanically, and then this is like a new plot element they're introducing at the end here.
Yeah, and it's all those other colors, right, that are off from the offshoot. Just the way that they're all layered there. It's crazy. And then when it turns out they're not aliens, right? And there's the speech bubbles are pink coming out of the guy that's on the phone. It's definitely wild. I have no idea what to make of this, Yeah,
a new antagonist of some kind, and who's hiring them? That's another question worth pondering. But yeah, this was like a little epilogue that just sort of teasing, because I like this issue a lot. Obviously the layouts are fantastic, the kind of the relationship between the husband and wife, they're kind of exploring that in such a cool little way, showing that they're both lonely. But from a plot perspective, this one was definitely a bit slower than like most of the previous issues, probably because it's sort of like, oh, we're coming back after a break, we're recalibrating, this is sort of showing where everyone is now before we get going again, and then just at the very end it's like, okay, here's where the plot's starting to kick in. So it was a little bit slower than previous issues, so maybe not my favorite, but everything that makes this book great is here. So it was still a very, very good time. Very happy to have it back. So yeah. All right, Matt, what are you giving Absolute Martian Manhunter?
I'm gonna give this a straight 8. Like, it's pretty good. It's still, there's a lot going on here, and I feel like this is one of the few Absolute books that's the sum of it parts. I'm sure once we get the full big picture, all of the stuff it'll look better in retrospect. But as of right now, there's a lot going on. I don't know what to make of it, but it's still really good.
Yeah, I think it's getting into an 8.5 for me, just because the craft is so strong and like every scene's so engaging in its own way of like decoding what the hell each scene's doing with its art and how it's presenting the ideas and making us think a little bit. So it's not an 8.5 for me, but like, yeah, maybe I'll, you know, obviously this book's had 9s, 9.5s, may have even got a 10 at some point. It feels like it may have done. Absolute Martian Manhunter, issue 8, DENIZ Camp writing with JAVIER Rodriguez on the art. So, I mean, I don't know. Every time I start one of these issues, I feel like my brain has to process things very slowly just to keep up to like all the weird concepts they're throwing in and stuff they're doing. And honestly, there's an element of this one where I'm still not entirely sure exactly what. Like, I get the gist of what's happening, but like some of the finer details, I don't quite get all of them yet.
I think this book definitely is going to read better after you've read it once through, right? So you read the singles, and then you have some time to think about it, and then you go back and read it together. I think a lot of different things are going to pop, because I feel like Camp is excelling at telling the longer story. And like, yes, each single issue's been good, right? Good to great. It was highly rated by us all year. But I do think that putting it together when things lock in, it makes it that much better. And I feel like this is one of those issues, because outside of the stuff that happens at the end, I'm having a hard time putting some stuff together on this one. You know, I had to read, this one took me a bit longer to read because I kept going back over certain pieces of dialogue and looking at the the art, and trying to make what it was doing. And it's a lot. Like, it was not a lot of comic books overstimulate me. This is one that definitely does.
Yeah, it's probably best just to try and go through it, I guess, and just kind of try and get the ideas across here. So the first page is basically just trying to show that everyone in the city is starting to like rat on people, either their neighbors, their spouses, their parents, whatever it is, and it's all accompanied with these little panels to the side of white lightning on black, which I was kind of reading as like this is literally white Martian like influence, like striking kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the cracks in the. I was taking it, they're the cracks in the fabric of reality, right? This is how the white Martian is pushing in now.
I agree with that. But I think it is meant to look like lightning as well, almost like it's like, you know, like the sky is cracking open almost. Yeah.
Right.
So, you know, you get this idea, and because of this, John has been told that he's back at work and he has to go out and like look into some of these claims and sort of see which ones have any validity to them. But even just in this scene, we've got Julian narration, or not even Julian narration, but we've got narration from like Jean, the Martian, in his head. But some of it is like in bubbles that are talking to John, and some of it is just like narration talking to us. And you've got like his superior like eating, I think it's maybe like chicken tenders or something. But because it's colored in the multicolors of like the thoughts that we've been seeing throughout the whole book. So either red, green, purple, whatever. So the visuals are insane. Like he's biting into like a green blob, but it's talking about chicken, and the narration's talking about even the narration, there's speech bubbles coming from the chicken, but because it's in the color that matches the color of the so the green one that he's eating, the speech bubble coming from it is green, which does indicate that it's not real speech. It's like mental, you know, telepathy, Martian seeing stuff speech. And it's talking about how, if you knew what they did to me and how they fried me, you would never bite into me, and so on. Yeah,
they're the vegan talking points, right? When you talk to that person that's vegan and very pro animal rights, and they tell you all the horrible things that happen to farmed food and whatnot, those are all those in there, you know? But I also took this as, so these are supposed to be like chicken tenders or chicken fingers or whatever, but also the way that he's eating them makes it grotesque. So is that purposeful on the art style? Because I don't know anybody who eats chicken fingers with two hands like that. You know, like
and bites into the side of them. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, because it's almost more like he's trying to eat fried chicken. You know, so there's like this disconnect that's going on too, which has to be purposeful because we know this creative team, nothing's done by accident. And then when I go back and look at it now, this is one of the things it didn't hit me in the moment, but now we're talking about it. We know that the emotions take these different colors, right? From the beginning, this is what's been. So it's almost like his superior's eating his feelings. And this is how he's dealing with all of the work that's coming through, right? He's like stress eating. Talking about all the stuff that's coming through. And this is why the colors are matching the stuff that's coming off of there, right? And then the dialogue that's in there that's coming off the food, I feel that has more to do with the anti-life exposure that we're getting, right? Where you're just being bombarded by all this information.
The Martians is kind of explaining here or there that the anti-life exposure that's happening is driving cracks in reality, and it's driving people apart into being isolationists, and therefore that's what's causing them to rat on people and basically disconnect all of their all of the relationships that they have. So but John doesn't go to work though, he just goes to a diner and we get a lot more, again, sort of inventive art where these different colored thoughts come off of different people who are all colored in different ways. So there's one person is all red, one's all yellow, one's all blue, and we've just got like thoughts streaming from their head that's sort of written kind of like in sort of smoke writing coming from their head. So it just gives you this sense that all this stuff is kind of continuous and it's ever present. And meanwhile, we see back at his house, and he's not living there right now, his kid, who we know is infected with white Martian stuff, has like white smoke coming from his eyes as he's like ramming a toy car into the toy Martian.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, all right.
And then if you look behind him, the other figures are the ones that we see later.
Yes, yeah. So this is the element actually that I was a little bit hazy on by the end. So we get introduced to these three characters, right? And it's the very next page where we see them kind of in the world. And we see like the one guy with the hat, kind of the old-timey gangster looking dude, and he's got red, white, and blue smoke coming from him, right? And it's like, okay, that's one character. And then we have the woman who's floating and has all the different colors coming out of her face. And then we've got the woman who's just all in green, who looks like kind of like an assassin or like a secret agent. Yeah. Right? And it's like, okay, so we've set up these three characters. And then the issue progresses, and the plot of the issue is that John wants a night away from the Martian. He's like, hey, give me a night. I want to go talk to my wife and reconnect. And I like, it's hard to do that when you're always there. And the Martian says that's dangerous. We're more vulnerable to the white Martian if we're separated. But John insists, so he's like, okay, fine. I'll go and do some detective work in all these different mines while you go and have your night away from me. There's some great art depicting that. There's a page where, or a panel where the Martian is literally swimming from one brain to the next, and it's like a cool page. It's just some of the smart stuff this book does. But then we get to this thing though, where like these three characters, the three assassins I'll call them, are like coming after the Martian wherever he is. So like the Martian's inside the head of what seems to be a janitor somewhere, and we see like the gun with the red, white, and blue smoke around it, like fire a bullet at this guy, and we see like this panel of the Martian like sitting like in this guy's head. It's almost like we're seeing like a sort of X-ray of the guy's brain, and it's actually kind of like talking about how this this assassin represents the idea that nationalism is part of the anti-life of like saying, hey, we're separatists, we're this, we're that, which obviously feels very topical right now, and it feels like a bit of commentary. But it's like, oh, these three beings are attacking John, and like you said, we saw them on the table with the kid. So the implication there is that the kid, with the power that the white Martian has given him and being connected to him, has created these beings. What I wasn't sure about was that whether or not they were physically in the real world and had actually fired a bullet that killed this janitor, or if they're just like a mental projection that are attacking the Martian because he's also a mental thing, so they don't have to be physical. I actually wasn't sure as I was reading that which of those two things it was.
Yeah, I took it as that they're on the plane of existence that the Martian's on, right? Because the way that they say, so the page where, or I'm getting back there, where the girl's in green, right, and the guy has the smoke coming off of him that is red, white, and blue, right? They talk about how these illusions are important in life, right, and that they're to protect us from the things we're not supposed to see, the things that can hurt us, right? So it's just the idea, it's the whole idea of the social contract, right? And that we'll choose to be ignorant because we don't want to be uncomfortable, right? And that goes to me back to the stuff with the chicken, right? Is you have to be willing, if you're going to eat meat, right? You have to be willing to accept some of the bad things that are done to the food, right? To the animals that were the food, right? Other people can just choose to ignore that, and they can live with that delusion, like the chicken on the plate isn't the same as the chicken in the barnyard, right? To them, those are two separate things. And that's a thing that is keeping them safe, because if they think about that bird that had a life that's been running around that is ended to provide sustenance for you, they might not want to eat that bird anymore, right? So it's just easier not to think about that. I mean, that's what I do when I eat a burger, right? I don't want to think about the cow that lived a whole life. So In-N-Out could put it on a toasty bun with cheese,
I think about it. I think about the slow, painful death, and I enjoy every bite that much more.
Well, Pete, you've always been a little bit closer to anti-life, right? So when we see that there are these people walking around, and they're not, the guy with the red, white, and blue smoke, the people that are him, where they talk about the illusions are important, it's two people colored red and blue, and they look like they don't trust each other. Right, so it's almost like this sense of nationalism is dividing people, right?
Red and blue are literally the colors of the political parties in the U.S. So
right,
I don't think it's an accident,
right? No, and then when it says they protect us from the things we're not supposed to see, right? The lady that's made up of all the colors, it looks like that's almost like a memorial that's on the ground, right? But the person that's walking past it is just ignoring it, right? Because they don't want to think about something bad that had happened there, and then same with the lady that's all green that looks like an assassin, and then there's another person that looks like a homeless person, right, that's there, and it looks like she blinds the guy that's facing the other way, so that's him basically turning the other way. So these are all representations of stuff that we do to provide this thin veil, that divides everybody. And I feel like with what the Martian's talking about is the moment that we drop that veil and we learn to accept each other for who we are, that is going to push back against all the anti-life stuff, right?
Yeah.
When we realize that we have a lot more in common than we do apart, that strengthens us.
The plot of what's happening here is effectively that veil is getting thicker because the anti-life equation is pushing everyone apart. So.
Yes.
Well, those veils were already there in a thin way where we can, we know about the chicken. Right. We just choose to ignore it. It's getting worse in the sense that people are really getting more and more separate. So the social commentary is very strong with that as well, actually. But so we see that the Martian's been attacked by all these beings as John's went to see his wife and he's talking to her and and it is kind of cold at first, but playful at the same time, where she's sort of saying, hey, you tried to tell me that all this is because of Martians. Do you still think that? And he's like, well, I just called them Martians. They're not really from Mars. And then she's like, well, if you really have telepathy because of this thing, what am I thinking? And he's like, oh, cheese. And she's like, that doesn't count. I'm always thinking about cheese. That doesn't prove anything. But it did get me thinking, well, okay, well, get ready to think of a number. Get 5 digits and, hit it nail in the head.
But I do love the playfulness there. That's there. 'Cause they are a married couple. They have a kid. Of course he would know that,
It does feel like they are on the way to patching things up a little bit here, even though he doesn't stay. He does go back to the motel or whatever, but it does feel like they're getting a little bit further along. As the Martian is dodging bullets in the alleyway and all sorts. And there's a really cool moment here where he realizes that if he's been attacked, it means John's also in danger, so he's yelling out. And the whole thing is And that's the other thing with the wife is that, like are we entirely safe being around you right now? If any of what you're saying is true, and he kind of admits, no, probably not. So, so they basically, these three characters have effectively taken down, because the one that's got all the colors basically acts as a sniper and takes the Martian out, seemingly. And the ending of the issue, the big cliffhanger, is that it seems like the Martians come back to John, but when we see him, it's actually the new toy that the kid was making on his table. He was making a new thing. And so I think this is absolute Despero. And the reason why I'm saying that, two reasons. One, the kind of spiky kind of qualities remind me a little bit of Despero on the head. And you still get the singular sort of like, it's a green circle in this character.
Yes.
But the other thing is when he's talking to John at the end of the issue, and like he says, "Oh, they call me Despair, the killer of hope, Despair the blue, Despair the empty," and then the one that really caught me was Despair the zero, and I was like, Despair the zero, Despero. I was like, oh, that's very like it's getting very close to Despero at that point.
Yeah, and so a lot of people associate Despero with the big hulking pink guy with the fin on his head.
Yes.
But when he made his debut originally, he was this smaller, alien, like regular human sized alien, and the fin went the opposite way. The fin went horizontal, not like it went this way, not this way, like a shark's fin. And so when I saw the kid playing, like he's making things, and there's this weird fin thing, I was like, that kind of reminds me of classic Despero. So as we're going through, and I was going through, when we get there and it called itself Despero, I was like, oh, that's what we're doing. We're doing Despero as the concept of despair, as this not anti-Martian, right? But this, this whole sense of despair taking over as if it is the Martian, and the way that he's sitting there and embracing John.
Yeah, he's got his big arm around him and saying, "Hey, I'm your new partner." So it's like, oh shit, we're going to get at least one issue now of John like having to deal with this like alternate entity that is basically a double agent for the White Martian that the kid created. So I think that's going to be an interesting story to play out, and might make John appreciate the Martian more, and make him like, hope to get him back and have to save him or something. So there's a lot of good story potential there with that, for one. But I think what's so impressive about this book is that I almost always like the issue even more after we've talked about it than when I initially read it. I always like it when I read it, but usually sitting talking about it always enhances it, and that's not true for most comics. I would say, I'd say that's like a rare special thing with this, where the ideas are so deep and they're so complex that having a discussion about it always makes it better after the fact.
Yeah, and just this whole concept too of the anti-life is what's pushing through and breaking the breaking the cracks in reality. And it does feel like Mr. Miracle with what King did there by making anti-life this sense of depression in Scott's life. Right, and he's got to push back, but in that case, it was representative of Darkseid, the New Gods, and all this other stuff. And here, it's playing out with these thought forms, right? And the anti-life is pushing into our world, but it's taking things that are already there and magnifying them, making them bigger.
But it is tied to Darkseid, though, which I like. This was surprisingly the first book that showed us Darkseid in the Absolute Universe. It was, hey, the White Martian is working for Darkseid, or is connected to Darkseid, or whatever. So. No, I mean, I think it keeps shaking things up and reinventing the way it's telling its story, and the character of John and his family feels very fleshed out at this point, but also these ideas keep evolving, so there's always something new and interesting to see as each issue goes by. So honestly, it's hard to fault much of it at this point. It is a very dense book, and there's a lot of ideas to process, but once you do process them, they're almost always very satisfying.
Yeah, again, I get very overstimulated reading this one in a way, and not like, oh my god, there's so much art, or like in the Hayden Sherman looking at the art style way. That's just like it's very dense. There's a lot going on. There's things to decompress here. And then one thing I do love about this book is it includes us, the reader, in things, right? Sometimes it's Martian vision. Other times it's here. They want us to draw the cage around the Martian, right?
Yeah.
Like it breaks. The guy looks like Uncle Sam's like, I want you to join the agency. And the Martian's laying on the ground and they want you to connect all the dots. And when it does, that's how they're able to bring Despero in, or, you know, Despair the Zero. So yeah, it's a book that is, like ahead of the curve, you know, when it comes to storytelling, because it's so multi-layered. And yeah, I think it's gonna have this long legacy, I feel. You know, because there's no other book like it, even amongst the, you know, absolutes and some of the other companies that I've seen. This is one of the few books that I can see that stands like Absolute Martian Manhunter is just Absolute Martian Manhunter. You can't compare it to anything.
Yeah, and I think the build up as the Martian, is being attacked by the assassins and yelling out John's name, realizing he's in trouble. I think the art in those pages is fantastic, and then the cliffhanger is genuinely very interesting and shakes up what the book's going to be, at least for the next issue. So no, excellent stuff. And the idea of like strengthening the friendship between John and the Martian is also a really interesting idea, which I can only imagine their friendship will be stronger once they're through this story of like them being separated in some form. So yeah, excellent stuff. What are you giving Absolute Martian Manhunter? I'm
giving this a... Do I want to go a bit higher? I'll give this one a 9.
Yeah, 9 was what I was thinking as well. So fantastic. 9 out of 10 for that. Absolute Martian Manhunter, issue 9. DENIZ Camp writing with JAVIER RODRÍGUEZ on the art. All right. Every time I read one of these, I'm like, okay, what am I in for? And like they kind of wow me every time, because it's like, and it's always because there's always this little thing where in the first couple of pages I'm like, okay, what did we set up last time? Because like I mean I have that with every book where I'm like, it takes me a couple of pages to be like, oh yeah, that's what the last couple of issues were. Okay, right, everything's like reset in my brain and I'm back in the flow of it. But with this book, because it's got such weird abstract concepts, it's like my brain has to just work a little bit harder, and I'm like, oh, this is what we're doing. That's right.
Yeah, there's so much going on here that I feel like this is one of the books I feel like I need to read twice before we talk about it, and I just don't have time for it, you know, to do it twice. Because there's so much going on here, and like I know ultimately that Despair the Zero, or we'll just Despero because it's going to be easier to say. Yeah. I know he's not supposed to be depression, right? Because that's the whole anti-life, and that's been established, all this other stuff. But a lot of what Jones is going through with what Despero is telling him is a lot of like, felt to me like a lot of the stuff you see, or at least I've experienced going through therapy and whatnot, and about the negative self-talk and, you know, reframing the world so it's not like this. And this is all the dark side of that, right? Yeah. Oh. Despair Zero is telling John Jones, you know, that all the stuff is happening behind his back and he can't trust anybody, right? And that's just again a bad thought, right? Those are the stuff that when you go through mental health stuff that you're told not to focus on, and because that's not what the world is. And it's like this concept is completely blinding him to what's actually going on. And the way that we see it is like it's telling him what he's seeing with his own eyes is not going on, right? So there's a lot of that going on here.
Yeah, I mean the Sparrow stuff is very interesting, and you know the whole book starts off with this premise of the Martian saying we are weaker apart. We're both vulnerable because we're not together. That being John and Jean, right? John and the Martian. And you see that the Martian is being operated on by the characters who kidnapped him last week. And it took me a minute to remember that those were just kind of like creations that the kid was playing with these toys. So later on when you see him being operated on and the kid's literally playing a game of Operation, it's just that the Martian's now the game of Operation, was very, again, visually just very creative and really super smart. So yeah, but basically, before we get to the therapy stuff, John is looking for the Martian. It's been a week since he's been in his head, and he's concerned. So he's going to people who have had the Martian in their dreams and trying to talk to them. And he's still hearing their thoughts. He's still getting the multicolored, thoughts coming out of their heads. And he's trying to talk to them. But after a page or two, we're reminded that this other entity is there. The Sparrow's there. And he's unlike the Martian, and he is constantly just doing negative talk. He's such a downer, where he's saying, oh, this marriage, because these two characters he's talking to, oh, this marriage will never work. She hates him. He doesn't trust her. This is all going to go to hell. And then they're walking through the street, and he's like, oh, there's their child. He's probably going to be depressed or in prison later because he's got such a broken home, and so on. And, like, there's just a few pages of that, and it's all very, like, just, you can sort of feel how negative it is. And John can tell that this is not the Martian, that this guy is much worse than the Martian, and he's missing the Martian because of how much of this negative force is the entire time.
Well, and he even knows that this guy sucks, because he says that. Like, the new partner, really sucks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
He's working with.
He outright says it. He knows that this is like, if anything, this is just fueling his desire to find the Martian again. He's like, I need the old guy. But I thought I was frustrated with him being in my head all the time. But all of a sudden, like, this negative voice is so much worse that I have to go and there's he goes to visit a prisoner who's on death row, because again, it's like, hey, did you dream about this green Martian or whatever? And, like, the voice in his head is like, oh, he's just thinking about how much it's going to hurt. Is it, people are going to be watching him die, and he's scared and so on. Like, it's just, very, very, like, hard hitting with its, like, again, despair. His name is the Sparrow. Like, there's a reason why we're doing this. So, but we also get the sense that all the operation stuff with the Martian is that they're looking for something. There is one scene where I don't even know how to interpret it other than just the characters who are doing the operation, which are the entities that are the toys, effectively. Like, one of them basically gets high off of, like, the Martian's energy. Like, it sort of reaches into his body, pulls out this, like, multicolored energy, breathes it in, and then kind of, like, collapses in, like, a euphoric state. I mean, it's the best way I could describe it. So, that's when it's getting kind of trippy. You're like, okay, but one of the things I do want to say here, though, and this goes for most of the issues of this book, is there's almost like an arc to every issue of this book, where in the first half I'm like, this is really weird, I'm not sure how this is working, and then by the end of the issue, it all pretty much makes sense. I mean, I'm not saying every detail makes sense, but it all fits together where I'm like, oh, I get what it was doing now. Like, because by the time we get to, like, the therapy stuff, and it's intercutting with the kid playing with the operation game, and all this stuff's happened to the Martian as John's in the therapy with his wife, because he thinks he's going to a group therapy with his wife and son, and then he's there and the son's in a different room, and it turns out the wife has told the therapist about him saying that there's a Martian in his head and that he hears voices. So now that's all the therapist wants to talk about, and it's like, oh, they think you're crazy, you're never going to see your son again. The wife says something like, oh, like, he's been talking a bit more since you left, and then the Sparrow voice is like, yeah, she's saying that he's better without you. She's saying that you're a hindrance to him. Like, he keeps taking everything she's saying and it does that thing where, like, his bubbles are overlapping her bubbles to hide them, almost like the negative things getting in the way. Good visual storytelling.
Yeah, and the way that his text is like this sickly green too, and then we get to the, when they get to the flashback of why, he was sent out, right?
Why he was transferred
reassigned
from DC.
Yeah, transferred. Right. Everything has that sick greenly color to it as well, with the lightning kind of strikes going through. So it also tells me too, like, we can't fully trust anything that has that color on it at this point. Because it's all this, it's not quite right.
Well, again, this is the book introducing a new color scheme, right? We've got the multicolored thoughts, then we have the sort of the white, red, and blue, which was more the white Martians like version of that. And now we have the Sparrow's blue-green kind of like, because he even one point even says it out loud, like, hey, I'm going to show you a new color, like everything's bathed in blue. Yeah. And it's like, okay, all right, we're continuing the trends of what we're doing here. And there's some gorgeous visuals as well. Like, there's a page where, like, they've cracked into the Martian's anatomy, and, like, just like all these, like, golden fireflies are like just flowing out of his stomach. And then, like, the bottom of the panels, just you see the kid, like, playing the game of Operation, and you realize that this is kind of, like, this is literally just happening in, like, the waiting area of this doctor's office where he's just doing this.
Yeah. And the white smoke's coming off of his eyes and stuff, right? So there's a bit of a creepiness there with it, too. Because it's all in black and white except for the red on his sweater and the red on the Operation nose. You know, the game that buzzes, you know, too. So that makes for a stark image. And then on the following page, one of those agents starts torching all those fireflies. So it's almost like I was trying to find meaning in that, where it's like, were these the fireflies are like the beacon for John to find the Martian, and you know they got sent out, and now these guys are taking care of it, because one of them eventually does reach John, right? You know, but like, what does all that mean? You know, there's so much going on there.
Yeah, it's like he's trying to reach John and give him a warning, or like say that he needs help, or whatever. And you know, we get like this idea that like he is getting more frustrated in this therapy session, to the point where you see the Sparrow's like figure like drawn on his face, and he's like completely in blue, almost like he's getting hit with a blue light. And you know, the wife's like saying, "I'm desperate, John. You know, I don't know what to do. I was scared. That's why I've told the therapist all this stuff. Let's work together." And the next page is this like over the top layout where it's all blue and green. It's like the Sparrow's completely taken over, and it even says the Sparrow vision here. And this is you know, we're actually kind of like that may be the first time. That page at the top, it says the Sparrow, the White Martian, the Green Martian. I think that's the first time he just calls him the Sparrow. So it's almost like it's becoming like, you know, the term here by now.
And just the way too that the green is dripping off of all the lettering, you know, like on the panels and the borders and all that type of stuff too. Like it's just like it's oozing, like it's like the slow takeover.
Yeah, and you know, the wife's like, you know, "I'm doing this because I love you." The Sparrow's like, "I don't love you, John. I never did." But notably, by the time we get to that part of the page, it doesn't really look like the Sparrow anymore. It looks like, you know, this looks like it's like the Sparrow's like demonic version of the wife that he's sort of put into John's head. Like he's seen this like demon version of her now. But you also see the Martian yelling out Tyler, the son's name, which makes, you know, John run to the other room because he wants to see him. And when they do see him, like it's like he can see all the white smoke coming from his son. And we see it also sort of like floating over into like the wife and stuff as well. Like he can tell I think this is clear that John is aware by the end of this issue that the White Martian's like around his son. Like maybe he doesn't understand exactly that he's possessed or whatever it is, but he understands that influence is there and that they're in danger from the White Martian.
Yes.
So and the two, like, what's probably just two normal guys that work at this place come to like get him, but he sees like two big muscly orderlies who are going to drag him to a straitjacket room, you know.
They look like Monster Men from Batman, right? Like you know, and they're sickly green as well, and the therapist looks like this little like gremlin-y kind of figure, and you only know it's the therapist because of the pink hair that's introduced, and it's on her, and she has that big toothy smile, you know. So yeah, it definitely is changing his perception of things. Just the way that everything's blue as well.
And honestly, at this point, I'm not even sure if he's actually, like, if we're just in his head now, because it's like he just runs to the side and he runs into his boss, and it's like, hey, you know, I've got stuff going on with my wife and son, and the boss is like, who cares? And they look out the window and there's a firing squad killing people just outside the building. And it's just like, again, this idea of like the darkest possible like reality is kind of in his head, and he's seen all the worst of everything. And it's at the bottom of that page, you know, the Sparrow says, "But you came to the wrong place." You see that now. And then just in a black panel, all black behind him, he says, "Yeah, okay, I can certainly see that." But then there's a single like black panel at the end of the page with just that one firefly. This idea that maybe one little part of the Martian is still trying to come and like tell him something, or like you know, direct him or whatever, that the hope's still there. And then actually the panel in the next page is the one I was talking about earlier, where you see the white smoke from the sun going into the wife. Now, whether or not that just represents influence, or she's also been taken over by the White Martian. I think it's open for debate at this point, but
I definitely think that she's being wrapped up in like what Despero's showing him is that everyone's turning against him, but from him showing him that it is because he's in the state, right? So that's how he's impacting everything. And so regardless of what happens, she has been influenced because she thinks that she's doing everything for the kid, right? And to her, John looks like a madman, right? For whatever the rambling, talking about Martians, this, that, and the other, the transfer that he's not being clear about, and all this other stuff, you know? So he is truly alone, right? So when we see him here, she, on top of that page, she has the influence of the White Martian, and he has, you know, Despero on his shoulder as he's sitting in the bed by himself at the motel that he's been staying at.
Yeah, a really crappy looking motel room by the looks of it. And he's all, again, it's all blue and green. And then there's one panel of like the operation on the Martian with all the bright colors like spilling out of him like blood. But you've got the two characters, you know, the sort of gangster looking one who is like saying, you know, because the woman who's doing the operation is like, oh, he's got a tether in the physical world, and he's like, is it American, this anchor? And she's like, yes, an FBI agent named John Jones. And it's like, I guess it never occurred to me they wouldn't know this already, but it's almost like this moment is the White Martian finding out that the human like person,
he's the host.
He's the host. Yeah, he's like, so all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, John's actually may be in danger now, because now the White Martian knows who to target. And that seems to be the cliffhanger here, is that a bunch of like rebel hippie looking dudes with rocket launchers and machine guns are going towards the motel. And I'm like, damn. And that one Firefly is still kind of like on its way. So will the Firefly get to John in time and like give him enough of a help or warning or direction? I don't know, or hope, or whatever this Firefly might give him.
So like the reason that so when I had to look up the actual definition of despair is because when I think of despair, I just think sadness, right? But the actual proper definition is the feeling of complete loss or abundance of hope, right? And then when you look about what the Fireflies tend to represent when we see them in media and storytellings, are they're this light in the darkness, right? Usually when you see a Firefly, it's this one solo light in the dark, and that's what this is now.
It's literally panels of just black with this one Firefly in the middle, just, on its own,
and like a beacon or like a lighthouse, drawing. And as long as that little Firefly is still, going, right, John still has a chance, because I feel like that's his connection to the Martian. Because as far as we know, the Martian's not a physical being, so wherever he's being vivisected, which, they're doing like pulling his parts out or whatever, wherever that's happening is on a much different plane.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we saw him get captured, quote unquote, last issue, and obviously that's what's led to all this. But yeah, it's like, oh yeah, he needs help, but also John's in trouble because of this influence. And obviously the Sparrow was seemingly made last issue by the kid, or technically the White Martian through the kid, if you way to look at it. But
and then there's another panel at the beginning that really struck me is it zooms in on John's eye and you see the green Martian there. And then when it pulls out, there's a white Martian handprint covering the Martian's mouth, the green Martian. And then as it keeps pulling out, it's John's face. And it's just almost like everything with the green Martian is there, but it's being silenced. So it's almost like this intuition and everything. And then when John also finds out, like, he was selected by, or he was chosen by the Green Martian, and the Green Martian saved him at the coffee shop and that bomb went off, right? That's something new to John. He never even had considered that, you know?
I guess the other thing to speculate here is, like, because part of me thinks that the White Martian already knew about John's connection, and that's why the kid was chosen in the first place. Maybe that was happenstance. But it does make me wonder about these other entities, like the ones that are kind of the toys that the kid is playing with. Like, I said he created these things, but what if they're real entities and the kid's just kind of like representing them with toys in the same way that he had a toy for John and the Martian and whatnot.
They're definitely these concepts, I feel, because like one is called Agent High, and when we see Agent High, what's it doing? Right? It's taking that thing out of the Martian and getting what looks like higher than a kite off of it.
right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's these concepts just given form through the White Martian, and now they're trying to act, on, in conjunction with the White Martian.
Yeah.
And we know the White Martian represents anti-life through Darkseid, So these are things that eventually work towards that. And we felt like the gangster looking one was like that whole idea of patriotism, like the fanaticism behind it, which is why he asked, why, is it American? Along those lines. So again, sometimes this is too heady for its own good, but that's also what makes it work. Because I have no doubt that Dennis Camp will leave this in a, everything will become clear. It's just when we're getting piece by piece, it leaves me being like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with that statement that it's too heady for its own good. I don't think it is. I think it's exactly as heady as it should be, and it is why it works the way it works. I mean, if nothing else, it absolutely feels like these entities, if not the White Martian like itself, has learned that John is the host or the conduit for the Green Martian, and therefore, like, that's why he's being targeted. So I think that the cliffhanger it leaves off on is good. It feels like we're at our darkest kind of almost to an extent before we get into this last act of the 12 issues. It feels like when they do get reunited, John and the Martian, it's going to feel like a big deal. It's going to feel like they're back at full strength, and maybe they can achieve something now. I care about the marriage. I care about that being fixed as well. So on an emotional, personal level, that they've got that side of things covered too, as far as like caring about that. And then obviously just the concepts and the art and the way that everything's got these color schemes. The way that this kind of bounced back and forwards of like the Martian being tortured while Desparo's talking in John's ear and ruining the marriage further, which I already care about that. So I feel invested when it's getting in the way and like making it worse. And you get frustrated at John for like overreacting when it's like, hey, yeah, I told her you said you're talking to an alien in your head, because that's concerning. Which might make it very satisfying if at some point he proves it. I don't know if he will.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll solve it another way, like, and put her mind at ease by either lying or like figuring another way out. But either way, in the moment, it is this frustrating roadblock to get over, and but you don't hate him for it because he's telling the truth. No. It's true.
Right, and him seeing the therapist as someone standing in the way, despite the fact that she's actually trying to help, right? Because Bridget has no idea, right? Like, he just says that he's seeing this Martian. She has no idea any of this other stuff. She's just trying to help her husband, And the way that despair turns it into that everybody's against him, his wife, his kid, the therapist, the orderlies, and all that type of stuff, and the way that plays out on top of everything. Yeah, when it finally comes to and she gets a glimpse of the Martian, right? Because like whatever happens to save the kid, I'm sure it will feel. It'll be like she'll be like, oh, he wasn't. He's been telling the truth the whole time. And that'll, I feel, make their bond even stronger. So yeah, I feel like Camp is setting a lot of stuff in motion.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it going either way. I can see it going like she ends up finding out it's all true, or the way it'll play out when like the White Martian influence leaves her and the kid, like it'll just kind of more naturally kind of fit back together without her having to find out all that stuff was real. But either way, like it's got me invested in every side of it, and like the storytelling and the way it's representing these concepts. Every issue almost feels like it starts off being like, okay, what are we doing now? Am I following this? And then by like the second half of the issue, I'm like, oh no, this is all clicking together. Like I get what it's doing. And the fact that almost every issue makes me feel that way is a good. It means the storytelling, while being very inventive, is also doing a very good job of actually being like understandable. So, no, excellent stuff. I really can't praise it enough. So. Matt, what are you giving Absolute Martian Manhunter?
I'm gonna give this the 9. I was gonna give the 8.5, but then a lot of the concepts, coming around, there's some clarity. So yeah, I'm gonna bump it up to the 9.
Yeah, I'm going 8.5. Absolute Martian Manhunter issue 10, Dennis Camp and Javier Rodriguez on the R. So last issue ended with the kind of the hippie and the army coming for John, whereas the Martian has been held captive by I don't know what you call them, but the man and the woman, the entities that are torturing him.
Yeah. So I feel like, because I kept referring to Uncle Sam, so I feel like the guy entity is Uncle Sam. Still don't know who the lady one is. That's still to be revealed because I didn't catch a name here. But yeah, they're somewhere else.
Auntie Samantha, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
So some interesting stuff here. This ultimately builds up to John like getting out of his predicament and rushing to save the Martian, which he's able to do because the beetle or whatever it is from the Martian finally gets to him and goes into him and sort of gives him like a psychic message, and that gives him the willpower to get going and go and save his friend, which is really nice. It's a nice payoff because after, how tenuous the relationship's been and how he doesn't really want him in his head, but now he's been missing him and now he has to go and save him. All that stuff's good. There's a lot of build up to it though, with John like fighting off the hippie, and there's a lot of like bright coloured pages of gunshots and choppers, but all of the sound effect text, the chop chop chop, the brat brat brat, all that stuff. Every single time it's a different color. It's just so vivid, and it's very psychedelic, which goes in with the hippie that's coming after him kind of thing, but also fits with the color schemes we've been using throughout this entire book.
And the fact that the hippie is the one that's bringing like these war flashbacks to him too. There's a bit of like counterintuitiveness to this character, and he's got him up at the bar, and it's just Rodriguez on this one. It's just the amount of coloring that here. I'm just looking at a page right now that it starts with like the explosion against the wall that becomes a bunch of skulls, but like the way that the color gradient works, and it's psychedelic's the only way I can describe it.
Yeah, I mean, let's describe that panel for
much going on.
A second, because like you said, the explosion actually has a bunch of skulls hidden in the explosion, which is one thing, but you've also got John kind of like diving to the side, firing two guns like an action hero. So there's a lot going on in like every panel during this action sequence. And the one that gets me is when we cut to the Martian, who's kind of all tied up in this multicolored kind of prison, and you've got the two characters try to like break him and whatnot. And they have a line here that really stuck out to me, is we're still taking the entire US prison system just to hold it down. As if like, I don't know if that means they're using the psychic energy of every prisoner in the country to like hold Jean.
I think more it's the idea of how massive the prison system is in this country, right? Because they're containing an idea of the Martian. And so they're using that massive concept and the fear and all of the oppression that comes with it in there. But it also could be the amount of psychicness as well, because it's such a large system. But it struck me how much it looked like the Fourth World Kirby style stuff with all of the right angles, right? And how those right angles are cut through, and each one of those, squares and rectangles are a different color. Right, so there's just this vividness behind it all too.
Yeah, but it's also the colors of like the Martians' like thoughts and psychic
Emotions.
powers. So it kind of like gives this idea of like it is like whatever this place is, it is like made up of ideas and thoughts. It's not like a physical place. It's a place that's, I don't know, incorporeal, I guess. So no, there's a lot of fun stuff here. The big thing, this builds up to the ending, but we cut back to the wife and the kid. And the kid's obviously still very heavily possessed with the white Martian, or however you want to phrase it, but is putting thoughts into his mum's head. And it's not bad stuff. But it's not serious stuff right early on. It's just like, he's making her think, oh, I love my son. I'll do anything for my son. And she's making dinner. And that's all it kind of is. But it gets worse by the end, where it's like, oh, like, you're going to, like dad's dangerous. You have to kill dad kind of thing. But you still have the Sparrow talking to John and trying to talk him out of like fighting back, just try to make him give up, that it's hopeless, there's no reason to go after the Martian, which is actually one of the more interesting parts of this, is that when he does end up going to the Martian to save him, Sparrow doesn't get like kicked out at that point. Like the Sparrow's still there, so we end up with this weird moment where the Sparrow's like, well, I guess we're a throuple now, and I'm like, wait, you're still sticking around? Okay, that's interesting. I didn't expect that coming.
So in their great term of things, if Despero is supposed to like be this concept of like the depression and like an imprint of the after or the anti-life equation, right? Like is driving John, and the fact that the Martian's there, it reminds me of something that I had to learn in therapy to deal with my anxiety. Is my therapist always told me you have to make friends with your anxiety. And I was like, I don't want to be friends with that guy. That guy sucks. Like I don't like him. But he's like, well, if you're not, then it's a constant fight. So this reminded me of that, where it's like, well, if he doesn't sit there and fight the despair, right, and he embraces the Martian, and the despair is there, but he's not paying it any attention, then he doesn't have to fight it anymore, right? He just doesn't pay it any attention. And so I'd like to see where that goes further now. Well, like, is it going to be a struggle with the Martian and Despero? Or is Despero just going to be there constantly whispering these things, almost like a devil on his shoulder?
Well, this thing though is that up until this point, I was thinking Despero was like a third entity, like it wasn't something that just formed out of his mind. It was something that went into him, just like the Martian did. So, and the Martian we know is definitely a thing that exists. It's not just a conjure of his mind. It's not just like his, good side, if you will. Right. So it's interesting to me that. Assuming Despero isn't just something that's conjured in his mind, like something his mind made up for the lack of the Martian, which maybe it is, maybe that's all it is, and maybe that's why that works, but I'm curious to see where we go with that.
Because here at the, real quick, when he joins back up with the Martian, right, where the Martian tells him, black, white, thinking compresses the spectrum to the possibility of two, and he's going through there, as John's embracing the Martian is embracing him, Despero goes, wow, that was pretty cool. Not that it makes a difference. So it's almost like that now. It's got from being a lot less sinister to just being like these thoughts that you don't pay attention to, right? Like when you hear, like, you let the bad thoughts win, so yeah, that's how I took that anyways.
No, I mean, it makes sense. It's just that because the Martian is definitely a real thing, I've been considering the Sparrow a very real thing. This maybe suggests more that he's just like a manifestation in his head. It's more of a metaphor. Speaking of metaphors, there's a page in here where the man and woman who are working on the Martian are looking, I think, into the Martian's mind or something to that effect. And she's like, oh, this is a metaphor. And her name's Lo, because they actually used their names together.
Right. There it is.
But like it's like a black and white couple of panels of a movie theater, right? And there's a crowd, they're still sitting there, and they're looking at the screen. But then the projector beams in all the colors. So then we see this crowd again, but they've got, and it's the same, 6-7 colors that we've been seeing over and over again of the Martian thought colors, right? And then we see that each one represents something. The red says it's a romance. The blue one says I don't get it. The white says it's a tragedy. The pink says it's a feel-good story. The yellow says it's a piece of shit. The orange says it's a comedy, and then the green says it's a masterpiece. All kind of represent different moods, different ideas and feelings. And then the bottom panel is like all of these people who are now different colors are all fighting each other. And then the voice, the man says, a metaphor for what? And I'm sitting here going, that's an excellent question, buddy. I don't know if I could handle what this is a metaphor for, but it's definitely got me thinking. Yeah. It definitely feels like all the different feelings that you have in your head all battling for which one's actually coming out.
Because the way that it shows after the light, right? So we have this white light that shines. Instead of onto the screen, it seems like it's shining onto the people, right? And it's all of these colors that make up the white light. That wash over the people in the waves, right? And then below that, that's when we get the ones where it's describing what all those different colors are going through, right? And then it shows them fighting there at the end. So it's almost like, well, it seems like, again, you said a metaphor for what, but I feel like it's just right there, and I can't put my finger on it. It's like this came from somewhere, right? Because that's what the light's going for. And it's washing over the crowd. And then after that, they go from these gray, drab to them inhabiting colors to them fighting, right? So it's almost like, are our emotions, or are emotions part of us, right? Are we acting them out, or are they acting us out?
And it transitions into the next scene with the mum and the son, where it's almost like it goes to the like the cooking she's doing, and all the colors are in the cooking. But notably, the thoughts that are coming from the son to her have a little bit of color around the white. It's not a lot. It's faint. It's very pale, but it's almost like there's a little bit of color trying to get in there, and it's almost like. It depends which way around you read it. Either it's the son is trying to make her feel emotions, so there's an attempt at trying to put the colors in there, or it's like her emotions are sort of almost trying to battle the emptiness of the white thoughts. But either way, it's a really cool visual, and it kind of like it almost suggests this idea of like he's influencer, he's trying to like convince her and take over her mind, and like even if she doesn't realize that her mind might be trying to fight it. You know, it's like it takes time. It's not like just a snap of the fingers and she's ready to do what the White Martian wants.
Yeah, it's almost like he was trying to play on her maternal instinct, but then that maternal instinct started pushing back, right? Because all those white thoughts before, they don't have these little touches of color. And to me, it's whatever she's cooking right here and having the thought of her holding him when he was a baby. That right there, that panel, that thought, that moment is where she starts poking through, because now she looks back at the kid instead of down at the food.
Yeah.
Right. So it's almost like he pushed too far, and now this is starting to bleed back to him.
Yeah. No, it doesn't work, of course, because he seems to be winning at the end of the issue, but it does feel like it's a battle here in the middle. You know, and again, the idea that the Sparrow is a real thing, though, I think is a thing here, because he does try and stop the beetle or the firefly or whatever it is from getting to John, you know, the one that the Martian sent to him. Like, he's trying to run and grab it so it won't get to him, but it does get to him. It goes in his mouth and then seemingly protects him from a bunch of gunshots. It's firing squad style before he's able to fight back. And he just, you know, runs to the car and he drives off. But notably, when he drives off in the car, all of the 7 colors are all just bursting out of the back of the car like a rainbow. It's like all of the emotions are there. Every one of them. They're all inside, and they're helping them get to where they're going. So really, I just, again, the book's just of like color, and like it's built up this language of like what colors represent what, or more specifically, what groups of colors represent what, as opposed to one particular color. So no, but yeah, he ends up like sort of. I mean, it's hard to exactly tell or describe how this functions in the real world sense, but it's almost like he drives into like this like other plane of existence and then crashes the car and ends up where the Martian is, and goes to help them. And they try and fight back, of course, but once he's able to touch the Martian, it's almost like all of their colors disappear and everything's simple now. It's in just white and black, as they say. I mean, it's not literally in black and white. There's a little bit of color.
No.
But all of the strong colors go away. The backgrounds become white, and they literally hug. And the Sparrow watches on from behind, and kind of like, you know, the sad like third party.
He's watching from the cuck chair.
That's one way to put it. But that leads to the final page, where we see the reflection in the mum's eye. Like, it's almost like they're inside her eye, or they're inside the son's eye, even
Tyler's eye.
Yeah. And then the mum's like saying, "I'll do anything to make you happy," almost like it's working. And what Tyler, the son's showing her in her head, what the White Martian's showing her, is her stabbing John in the back, like literally killing her husband. And yeah, so she's like, "I would do anything to make you happy," and a tear comes down her eye, almost like she knows she doesn't want to do it, but like she's now compelled to do it. So it's really sad.
Yeah, she's very much like in a trance, right? And this is her subconscious poking through.
Yeah. Part of her knows that she's been forced to do something and she doesn't want to do it. But yeah, and the final panel's just the son eating his cereal that's all brightly coloured and smirking. So going to the next issue then, the plot of the White Martian is to try and have John's wife kill him to take away the Martian's vessel, his conduit for Earth. So, super exciting stuff. Very well done. as it has been, I think, throughout the entire book. If I was to make a critique of this issue in particular, I would just say that maybe some of the action with the hippie felt like it went on quite a bit long in the middle. Like every time it started coming back to that, and I was like, oh, we're still running from him and like dodging bullets and whatever,
That said, it was so chaotic with Rodriguez's art that I was just like, I understand why Dennis Camp would be like, yeah, just draw. Like, I feel like in the script, it was like, draw a really wild battle sequence, because I don't feel like a lot of it doesn't feel planned in that way. But yeah, it does kind of go on, but I understand why, because it's all enveloping, so I feel like we were in that flashback for like time ceased to exist. But yeah.
I mean, and like, it's a minor quibble. I'm just basically justifying why it's not going to be the highest rated issue of the book, because it's basically the only critique I can really levy at it. Because the excitement of John wanting to go save the Martian and fighting through the Sparrow's like negative, like, oh, there's no point, you shouldn't do this, or the Sparrow's trying to stop him and he does it anyway. So it's quite uplifting. It's quite hopeful. And then you get the gut punch at the end of, oh no, the son is like convincing the mother that she should kill John, and that's quite dark, especially since that marriage and like him trying to repair that marriage has been a thing the whole book. So it feels especially vicious to sort of try and turn that marriage against them here in the end game, because we only got 2 issues left, so we're building up to the final here. So yeah. All right, if you're ready to rate, Matt, would you want to give Absolute Martian Manhunter?
Yeah, because this, like, the art is doing so much, but it's a lot of me getting lost. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Like, it's still really good, but, like, the lack of clarity kind of, a little bit.
Yeah, I just felt like that stuff went on just a little bit long. It made the middle feel like every time we came back to that fight, like, it was really impressive art, and it was like really good for the first several pages, but then when we came back to it, I was like, okay, we're still kind of doing this. So I agree with the 8, actually. This is exactly what I was thinking, was 8 out of 10. Absolute Martian Manhunter, issue 11, DENIZ Camp, writing with JAVIER Rodriguez on the penultimate issue of the book. And a lot of the stuff early on in this issue is very much the idea that the Martian and the Sparrow are both in his head, and you get that first page where it's kind of cracked down the middle, and the Sparrow side's all sort of purpley, the Martian side's a lot more sort of healthy with pinks and yellows. And you basically have like it's almost like the little devil and little angel on the shoulder, but it's more about like inner thoughts and depression, where the Sparrow's like, we're almost losing, might as well just die, like, what the hell, we're almost there,
you have nothing to live for, you've made everybody's life worse. It really is negative self-talk, And I want to point out here, I want to give Rodriguez, right? I always do this, the credit for what are on those signs on the first page, where it almost feels like they're counter to each other. So like the free clinic with the healthcare is offset on the Despero side with a liquor bar, right? So like there's these parallels here of virtue and vice, kind of, the toy store on the opposite side is a gun store.
Yeah.
And all this, and it sets the tone immediately here. And this is one that the more I thought about it through the week, the more I couldn't wait to talk about it out, because there's a lot of stuff at play here with Despero, with the Martian, that I don't know if it all sunk in. That said, I've been thinking about it since I read it, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, the second page is even wilder page artistically, because it's like John's head, but it's kind of split up, where the Martian's beam is showing him like happy memories of like camping with his father. Remember the feel of the fire. Remember cooking the marshmallows. All happy memories. And then the Sparrow, his beam that's all blue and green, is like, oh, you're sitting by your father's deathbed as he's dying. You were wondering where the doctors were and thinking about hospital bills and all that. Like, it's just like, oh shit! Like the way that this is, and it's all taking place in an inside like overall shape of his head. It's just really, really good stuff. And then at the bottom, you see like the Martian and the Sparrow just like face to face, like almost fighting. And it's funny because I actually felt like John at the bottom of this page says, "Hey, will you do something about this guy?" I was like, oh, that's the first time he's kind of like, I think, acknowledged and talked about the fact that the Sparrow's there to the Martian. So I know that I think the Martian didn't know, but I feel like that's the first time it's just been outright said like that, where it's like, oh
yeah, he's getting overwhelmed by all of the stuff. And I do love that at the top of the page there's a caption from the Sparrow. It says, I mean, be honest, non-existence is sounding pretty nice right now, right? And so it just seems like this thing of the despair is just trying to overwhelm him. And I do like that it shows here that the Martian is trying to push back on all of that. So you really get this internal struggle playing out throughout the whole rest of the issue.
Yeah. So yeah, even the next page starts with like the Martian's like holding on to the Sparrow's legs and try to pull him back as the Sparrow's whispering in his ear. So again, it's just furthering this idea. And then, the book gets kind of wacky because he's worried about his wife and kid, obviously. And we see that the kid's basically, via the White Martian, just putting more and more like thoughts into her head, making her think everything's okay. But she kind of knows deep down something's a little off. And every time she sort of starts to question things, like, and it's represented because you see like it's all white smoke in the room. But then when she starts thinking about stuff, she starts thinking about her husband, John, the colors start coming out again, right? The real thoughts start coming out. And then all of a sudden the kid, via the White Martian just sends more white in to cloud it all up, and she's back to thinking, oh, everything's fine again. And I think what I like about this issue is that the issue is very much about John trying to get to his wife and kid because he knows the White Martian has them, and he thinks he's going to go and save them. But in the end, he actually overcomes with the depression and the grief, and it's actually the wife who's able to overcome the White Martian's thoughts and finds him. So the end of the issue actually ends with her holding him and saying, what's wrong, and like being there for him, which was oddly uplifting given that it was, all about him trying to get to her.
Yeah, because the first part of this series, right, was the relationship between them and him, and being lost in his work and doing the stuff with the Martian and him being distant and all this. So the fact that by this point that they had the idea of each other to come together, it is heartwarming. The other thing in the house, right, is the kid has filled up the house with these like creatures that look like they're made of clay, right? And it seems like they all represent something about the world that's like negative. So it's almost like the White Martian has filled up her house with all this negative feelings because there's the money, and then there's like the toxic sign and the heartbreak. In what grounds her is the thought of her husband, is the thought of John. And so I do like how that again all plays out, because they're all colored as well, these creatures, but they're not that same bright, vivid color that we associate with the Martian and the thoughts and all that stuff.
Yeah, they're basically kind of the same set of colors almost, although one's kind of like gray and one's kind of a black, and like there's kind of a range. But one's money, one's like heartbreak, and one's like it's a radiation symbol. So what are you going to call that? Disease, nuclear war,
toxic type stuff. Yeah, all the negativity. But I really like the 4 panels that split up the next page, like under that one, and you can see the vibrant colors poking in, and because all the other colors are muted, they stick out, so it really draws you over to there. And then they're suppressed.
They're suppressed by the white. It's like, oh, she's thinking about happy things. Like, got to suppress that. And then you see like the Martian kind of fending off those like those characters. The ones that are working for the White Martian, the ones that have got the red, white, and blue smoke coming out of them. They're attacking, and the Martian's like actually firing a beam from his eye. So, like, obviously a lot of the things we've talked about with the Martian in this book so far is that it's all kind of happening on this sort of metaphysical level where it's not a physical thing in the real world. But this almost kind of felt like, oh, this actually might be happening, where he's actually using his... Because the Martian does have laser vision, right? That's a thing, regular Martian
vision.
Yeah. So it seems like, no, he's shooting his beam out of his eye, he's taking on all these comers, and that, because he's protecting John, that gives the Sparrow time to just get in his head on his own and be completely, free to just try and corrupt him. And it sort of all mixes up where the woman villain drops her gun and John catches it, and the Sparrow starts making him think about the time where he did have a gun to his head when he turned on, well, not even turned on his partner, but his partner was corrupt, right? And he turned him in because he was doing bad things. And so it's basically he's playing on all these bad things from his past and trying to use that to make him break down.
And Despero telling him that you have like a kink for bad partners, and and it's just like, well, no, it's he spoke up against this guy, and then of course him and his wife had issues, but that's just marriage, So the fact that the despair in his head is also doing all this negative self-talk, and then it also made me think of like the whole concept of anti-life with Darkseid that they've hinted at in here, where like anti-life isn't death, it's just like the feeling of nothingness and just subservience, and so just the fact that like Despero is just talking him to it, like, you don't matter, nothing matters, you would have been better off not here, right? And it's all this other stuff, and when John does overcome it, it feels like a fist bump moment.
Yeah, well, I mean, that doesn't happen too easily though, because he fires the gun at Despero. But then Despero says, look at these people that are lying here dead with the colours floating out of them. And he's like, wait, did I just do that? And I think the neat thing about this is that on the top of that panel, the guy with the hat who's shooting at the Martian, he's firing in the exact same angle that John does a few panels down to maybe give you the hint that it was actually him who had, like, who shot some people, with some stray bullets. But this gets into John's head. And we get a lot more stuff here where the Martian's taking care of these villains and he's doing all that on his own in the background as Despero keeps talking into his ear and starts talking about, hey, most gunshots are self-inflicted. Did you know how many people in law enforcement take their own life? And really starts to like get into his head. But this is when we cut back to his wife, who's starting to then question things again and is seeing all the white smoke and decides to try and sort of break out. She kind of like, you get that one bit of green coming from her, right? Like she can sort of sense this one bit of green, which leads her to the door, and she actually smashes through it with a hammer to try and get out. So she does break out of the house, and she's basically following the I mean, scent's not the right word, but the scent of her husband is, for lack of a better term.
No, it is. Yeah, it's that. But also, so every time she tries to open the windows, like everything is shut and the glass is cracked, and this is like shows there's this feeling of isolation. And then she even's like, she goes, I'm sure there were doors before. And then she says, I want to ask. And then John is X'd out, like with a cloud of the white smoke.
Well, it's not just the word John, even the word husband. So basically, you get her narration boxes, and every so often the white smoke actually overlaps and hides some words, and it tends to be either husband or John, anything related to him. So it's this idea that it's still trying to cloud her thoughts, but she's still thinking anyway.
Right.
Really nice touch in the art.
Like, yeah, and it's like the sense of isolation, and then she even says like Tyler smells wrong, like as the mother, like. He smells like nothing. It's like the absence of odor. And then that, because of all of that, and we get all the white smoke, that's when that green starts fading in or like drifting in. So again, it's just the art and the story or in the letters working together like perfectly.
Yeah, because and there's a bit later on where he just Despero says to John, "Oh, your son died months ago. He ate a chocolate bar that was poisoned," which was a very dark thing to suggest. So. I mean, I'm assuming he's not dead. I'm assuming he can be brought back once they get the White Martian out of him.
Here's my thing, like, knowing what we've read with DENIZ Camp, and like, he's not afraid to pull punches. And so, like, what if the son died?
Well, that
is the White Martian.
That wouldn't be pulling a punch. That would be a full punch.
But that's what I'm saying. I said Camp doesn't pull punches. So, like, him making that the kid died, and yet as a couple. Them, putting that up, and that said, him dropping it right now with like an issue to go, that's not great storytelling. But yeah, that put into my thought, like, what if Despero's not wrong, right? Like, what if the kid did die, and this is why he's been so, been able to be affected, is like the absence of his son, and deep down he knows that's not his son because his son died. But
I don't think it's bad storytelling, because I think it's just this idea of like the seeds of doubt, because that's what all Despero's doing is making him doubt and doubt and doubt.
Like when I say about the bad storytelling, like let's say the son, is dead. The fact that we didn't even get a hint of it until the second to last issue, that something might be up that John noticed or the mom noticed or whatever, that's the only thing that would make me pause on that. But it definitely.
I still don't think that's inherently bad. I don't know why that's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just something that big to the story, I feel like would have been seeded early on. Like we would have picked up on that.
I mean, he's been acting off for several issues now.
But we just thought that was the White Martian, right? Like there was outside of him eating the poison, right? At the end of that first arc, we just thought that's how the White Martian got in, and took him over.
Sure,
but what if?
Yeah, but I don't think that finding out that that might have actually killed him, which I don't necessarily think it did for the record, but if it did, I don't necessarily think it's bad to not reveal it until now. If actually a bit of a gut punch, if that is the case, like it's.
Yeah, I just again with the way that he's been telling the story, not having little pieces there to to lead to that, and I'm just dropping it there. I shouldn't say bad storytelling. I'm just saying it wouldn't be fulfilling, I think, to leave it till the second to last issue to address up to that.
No, I have no issues. Without knowing how the last issue is going to play out, I really cannot say a negative thing just for that line.
I'm just saying that's where I'm at right now with it, because that was again, I went, oh man, what if he's been dead the whole time? That's where I went and was like, that's why everything's been off with the kid, and it's not just the White Martian. It's, you know what I mean? It's the idea of the kid, and that's what is causing all of this. Like the loss of a child affecting them both in such ways, and
Well, that doesn't sound like it's out of nowhere, though. That sounds like you're saying that all of a sudden a lot of things make sense, if that's what the reveal is.
Well, right, but again, when it got brought up on the second to last, I don't actually think they're gonna. I think the kid is the kid, and they're gonna purge the White Martian and all of this. I'm just saying, hypothetically, in that thing. So we'll see in the next issue.
Yeah, I think you're working yourself into a shoot. Is basically what I think. So
yeah.
I wouldn't worry about it effectively. So. There's some other stuff here where Desparo sort of like shows someone like getting executed in the electric chair and says, "Oh, you've sent lots of people to the chair yourself." And he's like, "I don't think we use the chair anymore." And he's like, "Oh, who cares? Like, electrocution, lethal injection, it's all the same thing in the end, right?" So you get this horrific thing of like just people watching this guy be killed. So it's. It's really playing with this idea, and you see like all the color of his life leaving his ears in this big 2-page spread as this guy gets killed in the chair, and he talks about how meaningless all this is, because he says, "Hey John, you always wonder why things happen the way they do, like why the choices get made," and he's like, "Hey, this guy got this harsh sentence because the judge who sentenced him didn't have breakfast that morning and he was hungry, so he was more malicious than he should have been. It's that meaningless. Nothing has that great sense of purpose." And this is just kind of what starts to like make him break down. You see kind of, and there's a great panel here of like, the guy who was executed. It's the next to the panel of the wife running looking for John is the head's down, and there's just like the faintest bits of color still just kind of floating from his head, just like fumes after he's died. It's really, really sad. But no, this makes. On you go.
Free will is a fairy tale next to it.
Yeah.
Too. That also goes in with the whole anti-life. With the dark side of it all. So that going and just putting it with death and just in the darkness, and like every time that we've seen Desparo kind of talk, we kind of get his outline somewhere. Here, it's just his speech bubble with the neon green and everything. So it really drove that home. Like, just that sense of hopelessness.
That makes him run out, saying, basically having a breakdown, and he starts yelling for his wife and his son, and that's when Desparo says, "Tyler is dead. He died months ago, poisoned by a choco." And, John yells out, "No," and is on the fetal position on the ground in the snow. And this is when his wife finds him. Bridget runs up to him. And there's a panel here at the bottom, like it's intentionally not finished. It's like just the line work of John looking distressed, like all the color's gone. He's like, "What did you think? All these cracks were just in your head?" Well, were they? But what happens in your head also happens. And yeah, the final page is her holding him, saying, "I'm here, John." And the bottom of the page is just possessed Tyler dancing with all of his creations. Yeah. I mean,
it's so creepy. The kid, it's like a really messed up Where the Wild Things Are.
I know. I was thinking it's very Wicker Man. It looks like a little cult that's getting ready to put his dad into a Wicker Man.
Yeah. Also, because there was that undercurrent of the cracks throughout. Like, we keep seeing like the green writing with crack, and here, there's a crack in reality above Despero.
Yes.
Right. With the laughing and whatnot. So the whole thing, there were cracks. And they were just in your head, but they're still there. Like,
well, I mean, I think the more people who crack, the more people who succumb to the White Martian, the more that the real crack forms. That Darkseid's crack will emerge, and the anti-life will seep in.
Yep. And then just the fact that bottom part of that last page is just on the white, right? So it's almost like, even though there's the white smoke, it's almost like the white has completely overtaken everything down there.
Yep.
So very, very good stuff.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a good, I think we started this issue with they have to get to the wife and the son because they're trapped with White Martian stuff, and it's like, okay, that's a good goal. It was exciting to start off the issue that way, but again, it became a bit more nuanced as it went on, where it's more about the depression for John kind of overtaking, and we have this representation of that of the Sparrow actually saying all of it to him in his ear. And Jean, the one who's protecting him, isn't there to help fight it off because he's too busy fighting agents of the White Martian. Like, I think the idea that he breaks down and the wife has to kind of be there for him makes it more this two-way street. It kind of comes all back around to really being about their marriage and like how he's been holding things from her and not letting her in. And that's kind of how all this started, is he went through stuff at work where someone got hurt, where he turned his partner in, and all of the bad mojo he got from that, and the way he was being treated at his new position, and all of the stigma from that. He wasn't talking to her about that, and this depression was allowed to grow. So it does feel very fitting that a big part of this ending is going to be finally letting her into what he's been going through. And not just telling her about the Martian in his head, which he's already tried to do, and she thinks he's crazy because it sounds crazy.
Well, and then there's also a piece as the Martian's fighting these guys and stuff that they get talking about how the Martian's always been there. And so Despero's whispering in his ear, and go back and look at your life. And there's all these like moments that he went through, him getting like an ice cream cone, him and him and his wife in bed together, him with his son, him graduating, and the Martians in all of them if you look close enough.
Yeah, right? the final one's that moment with his partner with the gun, and you see him kind of in the background, sort of like hovering. It's
and it puts into his head like Despero tells him like, you're not the driver, you're the passenger. And that's where they bring up the thing on death row. So I do like the idea that like, even though he is the passenger or whatever, he does rely on other people, right? And whether it's the Martian in his head, right, or if it's his wife, he needs that. No man is an island.
Well, what is it? Well, Despero's trying to say he's always been there and he's not helped you, so he's responsible for all this, and you have no free will. Everything is determined, and you have no say in any of it. So this is all destined to be bad. What I think is actually going to be the interpretation of this is that the good side of him, the side of him that can help fight him depression, has always been there, and it's just trying to be framed in a negative way by Despero. Now, does that literally mean the Martian had already kind of latched onto him, like before the start of this story? Had he already latched onto John like years ago, and has been there for a long time, sort of like simmering until he needed to sort of like emerge and actually be like the power in his head? I don't know. I don't know if we're going that route. But at least in this moment, it kind of feels like Despero was trying to frame this as, oh, he was always there and he never helped you with any of this. But in actuality, I think it's going to be more, no, that part of you that can fight off this darkness has always been there, and it was there during those moments, but just was unable to help because you let the darkness overcome and, not like basically succumb to the bad thoughts or whatever the predicament was. So I think we're kind of inching into that territory, but it was an interesting moment for Desparo to try and disparage the relationship with the Martian.
And just there using all of that and then how it ends up with his partnership with his wife, right? Like, even if the Martian's not with him right now and he's been completely overtaken by despair, the fact that she's the one that gets to him.
Yes.
Right. And so I do feel like that's going to be the reminder that, I've always needed help. Right. Because again, no one's by themselves in this world. We all rely on each other. And then that takes me back to the first page, right, where it's that split down the middle with the Martian positive side and the Despero negative side. They're two halves, right? It's all the same thing. And then when we get to the end with the crack in the sky, it's like, the cracks were always in your head, and they've always been there, always were, and now they're coming onto the outside. I feel like the thing that's gonna ground him here now is that his wife came through and did all that stuff. So again, that's some really good, right? They're very fulfilling here at the end, that she's the one that finds him in that fetal position, in that state. And then we also get that the Martian took out 2 of the 3, right? But the secret agent lady is the one that escapes back into the movie posters.
Yeah.
And goes off. So again, I would love, if I could ask Dennis Camp anything, I'd be like, what are these guys supposed to represent? Like, because we got the hippie dude, we have her as the secret agent, and then we got the Uncle Sam G-Man type thing. And it's like, okay, so why the secret agent is the one that, why did she get away? Like, is that going to pay off? Like, there's a lot. I feel like he uses a lot of imagery and that type of stuff. That doesn't necessarily need an explanation, but I would just like it. I'd like to talk to him about it.
Yeah, the whole thing with because I think it's just a simple thing of those people are around you, and then the positive and negative thoughts are just trying to shape how you view them, right? Mm-hmm. So this idea of the negative thoughts, in this case, the Sparrow saying, "Oh, your wife hates you. She doesn't love you. She doesn't think this of you." And the good thoughts are obviously, "No, she loves me. She cares about me," and all this. Mm-hmm. So this idea of her showing up at the end to be there for him is proving the good thoughts, right? It's reinforcing them in a way that he needs them reinforced right now, and that potentially is quite touching. And then together, and I think this is where it's probably going to some extent, is that it's going to take both of them in unison, working as a team to save their son. And now that they're both there for each other, they can achieve that. So I think that's where we're maybe going in the grand scheme of things. How exactly that plays out, we'll find out. But I think that's where we're going. I love that Dennis Camp was able to unpack all this stuff, because we believed in this enough that it got a full maxi series out of. Right, because it was only going to be the 6 issues. That's initially. True. Yeah. So the fact that he unpacked all of this and is, kind of like the Swamp Thing book, that the back half has so much more going on. When Ram V got to do the back half of that, all the Sparrow stuff, I think really has upped the series as a whole. To see that up against the Martian and how it affects John. So, this is right. Read comics, guys. This is what we get paid off with. I don't think you have to tell the audience of this show to read comics, Matt. I think I think they're here because they're already interested. All right, will you give it Absolute Martian Manhunter?
I'm gonna give this one I'll give it a 9.
Yep, I think I'm going with a 9. And the only reason why I'm not going higher than a 9, which I don't usually feel the need to justify that, but obviously this is at such a high level that I'm just going to say that once the Sparrow's taking him around and talking in his ear, it doesn't have as much of a structure in the middle, I felt, because it's hey, we're looking at this part of your past, then we're going here to look at this convict, and that just runs on a little bit in a way there where the structure isn't quite as tight as perhaps other issues have been. It's a very minor critique I'm giving here. I'm just saying why it's not escalating to the 9.5 and 10s of the world. Absolute Martian Manhunter issue 12, Dennis Camp writing with Javier Rodriguez on the R. And this is the ending of the 12 issue series, at least for now. There's always a chance it'll come back. I mean, it definitely leaves it in a place where there could be a new adventure of sorts, but this definitely wraps up all of the threads and the themes and the emotions that they've been playing with up until now.
Yeah. And it's never felt more connected to the absolute universe as much as this one, because we see our absolute trinity pop up through as the page, count goes.
Yeah, a little bit. It's not even like super relevant. That even honestly, the bigger moment was more just when Darkseid was in the background again. It was talking about God being in and everything. And in the case of this universe, God is Darkseid. So that was very much there. I mean, the main thing of this, though, you could talk a little bit about what it's doing at the start and what, but to sum up this issue in one sentence is after the Martian fights off Despero or Despair Zero, he basically uses his powers so that both John and his wife, Bridget, can basically just experience each other's past from their perspectives. So John experiences her upbringing and what she felt when she first met John, and what she felt when their son was born, and vice versa, where she could feel what John felt when he met her. And it's like, oh, this book all been about empathy and understand what each other is feeling. Our final issue is going to be about these two people who have been having marital problems, and they've been started slowly drifting back to some better place where, oh, maybe there's hope. And then this is like, no, we're going to actually go through all these big events in your life and see how the other person felt and how important that was to the other person. And ultimately, it's like, hey, and all of this being wrapped around the idea of our son doesn't speak, so we don't know what he says. We have to try and understand him via other means. He has to find his own language, as it's put at one point in this issue. And it's a visual thing, and kind of that ties in with all the theming of the color smoke and all that and everything. So, it all wraps up together in a neat bow, frankly.
The way that Dennis Camp takes compassion and empathy and turns it into a hero in the Green Martian, right? And he goes back and does this Herculean task of making, John see, Bridget's experience, and then Bridget seeing John's experience. And that's the thing that gets them. It's not like superpowers. It's nothing like that. It's their understanding of one another that end up getting them on the same page so they can save their son.
Yeah.
And again, it's this big alien thing, but it's the most human concept.
Yeah,
and again, the way that he was able to trick us, not trick in a bad way, but to be like, oh, this is a completely different entity. But it was within them the whole time, right? It's a very, very nice story.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is the Sparrows try to show, hey, your son's already dead at the start, and John's kind of trapped in his mind. And when Bridget finds him, and that was kind of how the last issue ended, was her actually physically finding him. She's holding him, and she actually sees the Sparrow, and she's like, wait, is this the Martian thing that John was telling me about? I didn't think you were real. But then the real Martian stands up, he pops out of John's head and fights the Sparrow, and she can kind of see that there's this force for good fighting the force for bad, to the point where the Sparrow's arm gets ripped off, and he goes running to their son Tyler, who's the possessed by the White Martian. He's storming through the earth with basically a conga line behind him, collecting people and celebrating the fact that the world's going to end if John's not able to snap out of it, and the despair takes hold. And again, you could sort of read this, how literal is this, and how much is this just a metaphor for the their family falling apart, and all of that. So it works in both ways.
John and Bridget's reality is going to fall apart, right? If they don't save their son, it's going to be completely broken beyond repair. And so for them, that is their whole world. So the way that they cage it by making it that it is the world that is experiencing this, and Tyler affects people in Japan and leaves a wake of, not destruction, but
I mean, there is some destruction
and whatever,
because some people drop dead because they've been dancing without any, food or drink for too long.
And there is a line too, and I'm trying to find it, but it's essentially all the bad ideas in the world are forming a conga line behind Tyler, and just one of them with it's racism and bigotry, and it's just credit scores, and in a very heady book, it's nice that they put a little bit of humor in there to break that up, right? And I can't find it right now.
No, I remember the line. I remember them bringing up the credit scores. That was a funny moment. But honestly,
it's very funny.
My art moment of the issue is probably when he's connecting the two of them, and he's basically trying to get John out of the despair because John's trying to attack him in his head with the shard of glass, and he basically spits all the feelings onto him, right? So he can feel the things again. and it basically shows that they're going back to like when Tyler was born, and we see like basically the semen like hitting the egg. But the panel after that is very 2001, where it's like the baby's head, right? But then like the Martian's eyes behind him, and it's just, it's very 2001, it's very ethereal, but also the fact that it's just one red eye is very HAL 9000 as well. So all the 2001 parallels were just kind of hitting me at once there with that, but it was a very hopeful way of like 2001. You know?
It's not, you don't have the robot, right? You have the entity of compassion and empathy, you know, getting in here.
Yeah, you've got this idea as well that like the Martian in some way, like he's kind of represented on the blanket when she's holding her newborn, or when the toddler version of Tyler's building with the cups, it's got the Martian colors on it with the red circle and the green. And it's this idea that, all these empathies kind of exist with him, and it's kind of like that going away from him that's caused so many problems in some way, or at the very least it's a visual representation of like, he represents all of the good vibes and empathy we can have for each other, and as that's like drifted away, it's left him without that love. And this growing contempt has sort of risen within him, with the absent father, with the parents always fighting, and so on and so on. So, you know, but yeah, all these flashbacks to like when they first met and stuff, and seeing like just those moments and how they felt, and like hearing like her narrate like his story and then him narrate her part of the story was an interesting little kind of like overlapping effect that really made it all work. So it's very good. Probably one of the best moments actually is when there's like a moment where like the kid's been born, and she's like had kind of a rough time, and she's like, hey, hold the baby, I need a break. And she says in her narration that, I never really occurred to me what he thought when he looked at me when I was covered in spit, and like I hadn't slept, I'd had no shower or anything, but like he didn't look at me as if he was disgusted. What he felt when he looked at me was, something else. It was like, I'd never seen myself through his eyes like that, where he was more happy to see me in that. Not that he was happy that she was disgusting looking, but more just what it represented by being like, the active mother who's going through all this with him, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So in his eyes, I am, we are, life is. And it goes to his boss and says, beautiful, Jones. Welcome to the, right? So the way that it handles that, where he's seeing this woman who is covered in baby spit and is tired and is not put together whatsoever, but he looks at that and sees the mother of his child, and that's what beauty is, So it's not, there's not this resentment that she was feeling, right? Because she's got the baby brain and thinking like, I was so in this negative headspace that I thought that what he was seeing was ugliness or whatever. And it was like, no, she gets to see that. And that's that nice, that empathy and that compassion.
But
that unity.
Interestingly, it smash cuts to him being recruited by the FBI for this task force, and how the work starts to seep in and take over, and what he felt as he was like being roped into that stuff. And then more stuff with the backstory with the kid, and like getting a therapist because he wasn't speaking, and finding his own language, and all this other stuff.
And that's the thing too, is knowing, like, I have friends who have kids that are on the spectrum, like Tyler is, and it is this thing where you get so frustrated because you don't understand what's going on with your kid, and your kid can't explain what's going on with them, and you have to put aside like this human ego of just wanting to fix things and just allowing stuff to play out. So the way that the family goes through this, and they try different forms of therapy, and he lists like occupational therapy and speech therapy, child psychologist. But the one thing that works is art therapy. So it's like Tyler can express himself, and that's what seems to be his form of communication. And then that's where they, end up where we see like all of these creatures that we've seen throughout the series. And he has the Martian that's made out of clay, and it's right there. And it's in that moment too. Like, if the Martian is representing compassion and empathy and all these good feelings, that's what Tyler has right now is his parents' love and compassion and everything in this moment. Yeah. So again, it's working on all these different levels.
And you just got the cool art of like the Martian fighting the White Martian over the top of those two, because they're both lying there with the color smoke going into each other's noses, and there's a good 2-page layout with that as well. But the White Martian and the Martian are just kind of tackling each other over the top of them as they're having like this basically inner like heart to heart, where ultimately she's going to make him snap out of it. And when that happens, it is called Martian Vision on, and it says full conscious upgrade, anti-life degradation halted, and it's like he's seeing things in a way for the first time. And you get that great page after where he's looking at her and she looks upset at the top of the page, but like his narration boxes are overlapping the Sparrow in the background who's trying to like say bad things, and basically he's explaining the importance of her, and like the idea that the people around you will make you better and change you and can improve you, and it's basically talking about empathy. And as it goes down the page, the Sparrow kind of just sort of poofs into the thin air, where he just dissipates.
Yes, dissipates.
That's the word I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, I know what you're going for.
Yeah, but
and basically this thing that we're like, yes, there is despair, but on the other end of despair, there is, a better possibility. And they say, like the community that found the funeral, or a community that's found in the funeral for a friend, or the mother who lost a son, listening to his donated heart beat in another chest, right? So it's like, yes, there's these things that cause immense sadness, but there's also from that sadness, you can find joy. And so it's this blue Despero over this bright yellow, right? On it. And as they talk about like the painful beauty of a poem, he like poofs out and then becomes these little like butterflies. And it says the despair becomes the light. And again, that is another way that this, looking at the world and your reality changes outcomes. Because you could just sit there and be held up by despair and do nothing with it. Or you can use that as a motivator to go out and do and not let it beat you, right? And again, when we get talking about with Darkseid and anti-life, that is why anti-life isn't death, right? It is the state where you are living, but you're not feeling, you're not experiencing, right? And as Camp has gone through this book, Despair the Zero or Despair or whatever has almost become like an agent for that, where it's like he's not necessarily just straight up negative, where like the White Martian's trying to cause chaos and discord and all this other thing. Despair just kind of sucks, and he's just kind of there hanging out with you, and you don't want him to be around, but you don't know what else to do. And again, for them to be able to put that onto a comic book page and then hear how it resolves with like, oh no, that despair can become delight and become something positive. And the way that Rodriguez draws her face, right? Like it's almost an art study of drawing expressions, So, just a wonderful. And that bright yellow usually would hurt my eyes, but the way that it's shaded with the white, with the blue and stuff, it comes together really well.
Yeah, the way it shifts from her the sadness to happiness, and then once they wake up, she actually passes out, and he's worried for a second, but the Martian's like, look, she just had like a full psychic blast, and she's not. You've been like getting like psychic stuff from me for a while. You're used to it. Yeah. She's like a newbie. She like that wiped her out. She'll be fine. But just but basically, what it does is that it means that he has to go and talk to Tyler on his own, and he has to like sort of basically talk the White Martian out of him. So yeah, like he goes over to talk, and yeah, I mean. Like, we also see the Martian kind of firing a beam at just the white negative space as well to sort of represent. And yeah, like ultimately, it says the Martians are deadly with metaphor, which I think is almost like a meta line about everything that this book's been doing, honestly. But she
because they're thought concepts, right? So like to them, metaphor is fact, right? And that's how John had taken, like when Despair tells him that his son has died. But to a Martian, death isn't the end all, right? It's like a transformation. So there was layers to what was going on there. And I like that that's how they put that together.
So she does wake up, and when she does, she sees John just sitting with Tyler, playing with his Play-Doh with him. And yeah, And because, you know, it kind of, they set up this thing that one of the times that he got angry and scared Tyler, which maybe started this downward spiral in the first place, was when he got mad that Tyler didn't want to hug him because he was frustrated that his son wouldn't communicate in a normal way. And this is showing him accept that, oh, maybe he doesn't need to do that if that's not how he expresses himself, and accepting that. So,
and acceptance on there. When you're talking about too that Bridget passes out because she's got this big psychic thing, it is kind of, again, never having done drugs but understanding things. It has been like John has been microdosing the Martian drug through this time. So again, when he deals with this big blast at the end, he's been dealing with this the whole time. So that's what allows him. It's almost been like he's been setting himself up for this moment as time has gone, right? Like he's going to be able to overcome this big, huge psychic blast. And that's why he's able to go up and talk to his son, because he's been thinking about this and experiencing this through the course, in the events of the story. And just the way that it handles and it resolves when it goes from that bright yellow down to back when it gets to regular color, it almost makes the other colors not feel dull, but it makes them feel like, again, not back to normal, right? Like everything has this twinge of, of normalcy, which is, kind of a weird trying to describe.
Yeah, so there's that page with Darkseid, though, where it's basically, okay, so we have achieved something here. We have, introduced the idea of the full spectrum to the to the White Martian, and that's like something. However, anti-life is sort of in everything, and this is, tying into being the absolute universe, and there's just this kind of split up panel of Darkseid looking very menacing in the background, and the little tanglement of colors just pops like a balloon at the end on the last panel. So it's just kind of teasing some bigger stuff, maybe universe stuff. But there's a couple of pages at the end which maybe set up some other things for the future if we get maybe a season 2, if you want to call it that, of this, where we go to Shining City on a hill, and we have an Uncle Sam character who's kind of like a menacing villain, and they're talking about keeping an eye on John Jones because of the Martian inside him. It's like, we'll have to keep an eye on him, won't we, Agent Lowe? So there's that. And then the other thing is that we see that he has left the FBI. John Jones has become a private detective, which is very obviously more traditional Martian Manhunter stuff. And he goes to visit the character from way back in issue 3, who I don't remember very well, but so yeah. I
got very confused because I thought, because the way this guy was dressed, this was supposed to be John, and I'm like, what? That's not what his face looks like. Right. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh no, because the way that they're hiding John's face throughout all of this, and then it's just right here, City of Second Chances, and I was like, huh? And then you read at the bottom, it says, oh yeah, see issue 3. I was like, oh, that's the guy that's working there.
Yeah, because he's there to buy flowers because he's going to go and take his wife out on a date. So he goes to ring the doorbell, and a flower blossoms that looks very Martian Manhunter colored, and we don't see Bridges' face either. It's worth mentioning, both of them, we don't see their faces for this last sequence. We only see the back of her head when the doorbell goes, and it's only Tyler's face that we see smiling. So it's an interesting little choice there. And the final panel, or the final narration box, is just "Wish me luck," as if there's hope again. And he's trying, and that's what all this was about. It was the willingness to try and not give up. Yeah. So,
well, and I like at the end too, where it shows like the bug that's on these plants, right, on the flowers, and it goes over these cracks, and it says, cracks are running through things. The foundations of reality are shaky, but it's also true that green shoots up and rises up out of the dark. Life finds a way. And again, it shows the Martian, that flower that you said blooming that looks like him, is filling those cracks in reality, right? So it's just like, when things are feeling bad and it feels like the world's falling apart, remember there is empathy.
We can fill that empty space with something, so it's not just a hole anymore. Yeah.
Right. And that's a great message in 2026.
So there you go. That is Absolute Martian Manhunter. Unsurprisingly, it was excellent. Now, is it the best issue of the book? No. There's probably like 4 or 5 issues that I think are better than this final issue, and it's not because this issue was weak at all, but there was just other issues that were just absolute, home runs, knocking out the park, just completely blindsiding me just how great they were. This was great, and it was well within the expectations of how it would be great. So, but still fantastic, obviously. Looked great. Art was doing inventive things as it usually does. That 2001-esque moment really popped me. And yeah, like you said, the message by the end is very, very encouraging. And it does feel like they have set something up here for the purpose of coming back to it later, with him as a PI, with this Uncle Sam character. So maybe in a year's time, we'll be talking about, issue 13 or, season 2, issue 1, whatever they end up, do with it. So, cool.
I know there was no news. However, I did see a blurb saying that Dennis Camp said Martian Manhunter is apparently going to be in Man of Steel, or not Man of Steel, Man of Tomorrow. And that if you want to get to know Martian Manhunter, here's Absolute. So I don't know if that was just him essentially trying to sell his book, right?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Or maybe we're going to get a little bit more of a heady version of Martian Manhunter in the next Superman movie.
I don't see how that fits into a 2-hour Hollywood movie, though. But especially when it's not the focus. Like if it was a Martian Manhunter movie, I'd be like, yeah, sure, maybe they'll go completely absolute with it. But I can't imagine a minor supporting character getting this level of weirdness to him.
I don't either. But also, we had Metamorpho as the weirdo, kind of in the last one. So if they take a similar track, with that, I could see
that's easier to be. That's like a physical weirdo. You can just kind of see it and understand it. Like, So I don't know about that, but
I want to give Camp a little bit of credit for going into business for himself there a bit, and be like, hey guys, look at this. Go check this out. Any type of attention, but but no, this was a very, very good, very a book that I wasn't sure I was going to keep going with. It ended up being something that I'm so happy that I read.
Yeah. All right. Well, will you rate an Absolute Martian Manhunter issue 12?
I'm going to give this a straight 9.
I am also going to give it a straight 9. Excellent stuff, unsurprisingly.